The room went dead silent when the mountain man pointed at her. Eleanor Voss had spent 3 years invisible, scrubbing grease, swallowing insults, existing as nothing more than the fat girl who owed more than she could ever repay. The traders laughed. The women whispered. No one saw her as human. Then Rowan Hale walked through that door, and everything shattered. He didn't ask for the prettiest. He chose her. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. You won't believe what happens next. The smell hit first, always did at Calhoun's trading post. Wet fur, tobacco spit, and the sour-sweet stink of men who hadn't seen soap in months. Eleanor Voss didn't flinch anymore. 3 years working the kitchen had beaten that reflex out of her. She kept her head down, hands deep in scalding dishwater, while the noise swelled behind her. Saturday night, the worst night, when trappers came down from the high country with their furs and their silver, hungry for whiskey and meaner for entertainment. Jesus, look at the size of that one. Eleanor's shoulders tightened. Not again. Please, not tonight. Could use her to haul timber, another voice joined in. Save money on a mule. Laughter erupted. Sharp and ugly. The kind that carved pieces out of you. She scrubbed harder at the cast iron pot, focusing on the rhythm. Scrape, rinse, scrape. Her knuckles had gone raw weeks ago. Now they just bled quietly into the water. Eleanor, Calhoun's voice cut through the din. Coffee. Now. And don't spill it like last time. She dried her hands on her apron, threadbare, stained beyond saving, and reached for the pot. The weight made her wrist ache, but she'd learned to carry it steady. Spilling meant going without supper. Calhoun didn't tolerate waste, especially not from someone who owed him $300. $300. Might as well be $3,000. Her father's debt, passed to her like a family heirloom when he drank himself into the ground 2 winters back. Eleanor wove through the tables, eyes fixed on the stained floorboards. Don't look at them. Don't give them a target. Hey, sweetheart. A hand shot out, fingers grazing her hip. How about you sit on my lap? Could use some warming up. She jerked away, hot coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim. Leave her be, Dutch. That was Miller, one of the older traders. Not kind. Nobody here was kind, but occasionally less cruel. Girl's working. Working? That what we're calling it? Dutch grinned, showing teeth gone brown at the edges. Calhoun, you charging extra for the floor show? More laughter. Eleanor felt her face burn, that hot, cold rush of shame she'd never gotten used to. She set down cups with shaking hands, poured without meeting anyone's eyes, and retreated to the kitchen like a beaten dog. Margaret was waiting by the stove. Calhoun's wife, thin as a knife blade, with a mouth to match. You took too long. I'm sorry, ma'am. Sorry, don't cook supper. Margaret thrust a bucket at her. Potatoes? Peeled and chopped. And if I find eyes on a single one, you'll go without again. Eleanor took the bucket, 20 pounds, easy. Her back was already screaming from hauling water all morning, but she knew better than to argue. She settled onto the low stool in the corner, her corner, where she'd spent most of the last 1,000 days, and started peeling. The knife was dull. Everything here was dull, worn down to barely functional, like her. Through the doorway, she could see into the main room. More men had arrived. The noise climbed higher, fueled by whiskey and winter cabin fever. Someone started a card game. Someone else was already losing badly. Eleanor had learned to read the room by sound alone. The pitch of voices, the scrape of chair legs, the particular quality of silence that meant fists were about to fly. Tonight felt different, though. There was an edge to it, an expectation. Did you hear? One of the younger traders, Sammy maybe, leaned across the bar toward Calhoun. Rowan Hale's coming down. The name landed like a stone in water. Ripples of reaction spread through the room. Bullshit, someone said. Nah, I heard it too. Pete saw him on the Northern Trail 2 days back. What's he want down here? Man hasn't shown his face in, 4 years? 5, Calhoun said quietly. 5 years since Rowan Hale darkened my door. Eleanor kept peeling, but she was listening now. Everyone knew the stories about Rowan Hale. The mountain man who lived so far north, the crow wouldn't even hunt there. The man who'd killed 3 raiders single-handed when they tried to steal his furs. the ghost of the high country. Why would he come now? Margaret's voice had an unfamiliar tremor in it. Who knows why Hale does anything? Calhoun wiped down the bar with deliberate strokes. Man's half wild, always was. I heard he ate a man once, Dutch offered. Up near the Bitterroots, trapper who tried to claim jump his territory. You hear a lot of stupid shit, Dutch. But nobody contradicted him. Not really. Eleanor finished one potato and started another. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over while her mind wandered. She'd never seen Rowan Hale, never even been here when he'd supposedly visited before. But she'd heard enough to build a picture. Huge, savage, more bear than man. The kind of creature that belonged in cautionary tales, not standing in Calhoun's trading post. The door banged open. Cold air rushed in, so sharp it stole breath. Every head turned. The man who stepped through wasn't what Eleanor expected. He wasn't huge, tall, yes, but lean in the way of someone who'd had softness carved off by hard living. He wore buckskin and fur, weather-beaten and practical. Dark hair pulled back from a face that could have been 30 or 50. The mountains aged you different. But it was his eyes that caught her, even from her shadowed corner. Pale gray, like winter ice, scanning the room with the methodical patience of a predator assessing prey. The noise died. Every drunk, every card player, every man who'd been laughing 2 seconds ago, silent. Rowan Hale surveyed them all with that unblinking stare, then walked to the bar. His boots barely made sound on the floorboards. For a man his size, he moved like smoke. Calhoun. Rowan. The trading post owner's voice had gone careful. Been a while. 5 years. 5 years, Calhoun agreed. What brings you down? Rowan didn't answer immediately. He looked at the bottles behind the bar, the dusty shelves, the moth-eaten deer head on the wall, taking inventory. Then, need supplies, and I'm looking for a wife. If the room had been quiet before, now it was tomb silent. Margaret made a small choking sound. Dutch's chair creaked as he leaned back, eyes wide. A wife, Calhoun repeated slowly. That's right. You come down from the mountain after 5 years to find a wife. Didn't think I'd find one up there. The corner of Rowan's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Nervous laughter scattered through the room. The tension broke slightly, men remembering how to breathe. Well, shit, someone muttered. The mountain man wants a woman. Good luck with that, Dutch called out. Ain't exactly swimming in prospects out here. Rowan turned his head, just his head, body still, and looked at Dutch. The trader's grin faltered. I'll manage. Calhoun cleared his throat. There's Sarah Pritchard, widow, over in... Saw her. She's spoken for. Mary Chen's daughter. She's of age now. Looking for someone else. Someone else. Calhoun was starting to sound frustrated. Rowan, I don't know what you think we got here, but the women in this settlement, they're mostly married or too young or I'll know her when I see her. And then Rowan Hale started walking through the trading post. Eleanor watched from her corner, potato half peeled in her lap, as the mountain man moved between tables. Men shifted in their seats, uncomfortable under that pale gaze. He wasn't threatening them, wasn't doing anything but looking, but there was something in his presence that made everyone nervous. He paused by the card game, studied the women serving drinks, both already married to traders. Moved on. Eleanor's heart started beating faster. Stupid, she told herself. Don't be stupid. He's not going to... Their eyes met. She froze. The potato slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a wet thump. Rowan Hale stared at her. Not through her, not past her, at her, like she was something worth seeing. Eleanor couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The knife dangled from her other hand, forgotten. He crossed the room, each step deliberate. The crowd parted without him asking, men stumbling over themselves to get out of his way. He stopped in front of her stool. Up close, she could see the scars, one across his jaw, another disappearing into his hairline. His eyes were even paler than she'd thought. Unsettling. What's your name? His voice was quiet, rough from disuse maybe, or just from living alone in the mountains for too long. Eleanor's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She don't talk much, Margaret said from the doorway. That's Eleanor, kitchen help. She's not asking you. Rowan didn't look away from Eleanor. I'm asking her. The room held its breath. Eleanor swallowed hard. Eleanor Voss. You work here? Yes, sir. By choice? The question caught her off guard. I owe Mr. Calhoun money for my father's debts. I'm working it off. How much? $300. Someone whistled low. A fortune for a kitchen worker. Eleanor felt her face burn again, shame mixing with confusion. Why was he asking? Why was he even talking to her? Rowan was silent for a long moment, studying her face. Then he turned to Calhoun. What do you want for her debt? The trading post exploded. What? He can't. Is he buying her? Jesus Christ. Quiet! Rowan didn't shout. He didn't have to. The single word cut through the chaos like a blade. Calhoun looked between Rowan and Eleanor, calculating. Now, wait just a minute. $300? That's what she owes you. I'll pay it, right now. She's contracted to work. A debt's a debt. I'm offering to clear it. Rowan pulled a leather pouch from inside his coat, set it on the nearest table. 300 in silver. Count it if you want. Margaret had gone pale. Rowan, you can't just... I'm not buying a person. For the first time, there was an edge to Rowan's voice. I'm clearing a debt. She'll come with me by choice, or she won't come at all. He turned back to Eleanor. That's what I'm offering. Your debt cleared. A life in the mountains. It's hard work, harder than here. Winters that'll kill you if you're not careful. No neighbors, no towns, just survival. Eleanor stared at him. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen, not to her. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Why what? Why me? She gestured helplessly at the room. There's other women, prettier ones, smaller ones, women who know how to, I don't want pretty. Rowan's expression didn't change. I want strong. Someone who won't break when the snow comes. Someone who can work, who can learn, who won't run crying the first time things get hard. He paused. You've been working in that kitchen for 3 years, scrubbing their pots and taking their shit. You haven't broken yet. The room was so quiet, Eleanor could hear her own heartbeat. I'm offering you a choice, Rowan said. Maybe the first real choice you've had in years. You can stay here, keep working off that debt until you're too old to stand. Or you can come with me. Build something different. I won't lie and say it'll be easy, but it'll be yours. Eleanor looked down at her hands, red, raw, scarred from burns and cuts and endless work. These hands that nobody had ever valued. She looked at Calhoun, at Margaret, at Dutch, and the others, all of them staring at her like she was suddenly something worth noticing. She looked at the kitchen doorway, at the bucket of potatoes, at the stool she'd worn smooth over 3 years of sitting. This was her life, this corner, this shame, this nothing. I'll go, she heard herself say. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. Rowan nodded once. Get your things. I don't have things. Then we leave now. Hold on, Calhoun found his voice. You can't just walk out with... Rowan picked up the leather pouch and tossed it to him. Calhoun caught it reflexively. Count it. 300. Her debt's cleared. She doesn't owe you anything anymore. This is insane, Margaret whispered. Maybe it was. Eleanor stood on shaking legs. The stool scraped against the floor. She untied her apron with clumsy fingers and let it fall. Rowan was already moving toward the door. He didn't check to see if she was following, didn't offer his hand or any comfort. He'd given her a choice. Following through was on her. Eleanor took one step, then another. Her legs felt like water, but they held. Behind her, the trading post erupted in noise, voices arguing, Margaret shrieking something about the law, Calhoun cursing. Eleanor didn't turn around, didn't look back. She walked through that door into the freezing night, and for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't carrying anyone's dishes. Outside, the cold hit like a fist. Eleanor had no coat. She'd pawned it 2 winters ago. Just her thin work dress and a shawl with more holes than fabric. Rowan was untying a horse from the post. A massive bay gelding, scarred and mean-looking. He glanced at Eleanor, took in her lack of winter gear with a slight frown. This is going to be hard, he said. Not a question, a statement. I know. He unbuckled a bedroll from behind the saddle and tossed it to her. Wrap that around yourself. Won't be much, but it'll keep you from freezing before we make camp. Eleanor caught it awkwardly. The wool was rough, well used, but it was warm. She pulled it around her shoulders like a cloak. Rowan swung up onto the horse with easy grace. Then he extended his hand down to her. Eleanor stared at it. Calloused, scarred, strong. A hand that had killed and built and survived things she couldn't imagine. She took it. His grip was solid. He pulled her up behind him like she weighed nothing, and suddenly she was pressed against his back, arms scrambling for purchase. "Hold on," he said. "We've got ground to cover." The horse lurched forward, and Eleanor grabbed onto Rowan's coat, her heart hammering. Behind them, Calhoun's trading post receded into the darkness, its windows glowing yellow, voices still arguing inside. Eleanor didn't look back. The trail north was brutal. They rode through the night, Rowan pushing the horse at a steady pace that ate up miles. Eleanor had never been on a horse before, never had reason to, and within an hour, every part of her body ached. Her thighs burned from gripping the animal's sides. Her arms were numb from holding on to Rowan. The cold worked its way through the bedroll, finding every gap, every exposed bit of skin. She didn't complain, didn't ask to stop. If this was the test, she'd pass it or die trying. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through heavy clouds. The mountains loomed larger now, jagged peaks cutting into the sky. Snow covered everything, thick, pristine, untouched, except for the trail they followed. "There's a line cabin about 2 miles ahead," Rowan said. His voice startled her. He hadn't spoken in hours. "We'll stop there, rest the horse, eat something." Eleanor managed a nod against his back. Her face was numb. She wasn't sure she could speak even if she tried. The cabin, when they reached it, was barely more than a shack. Rough logs, a sagging roof, one window with oiled paper instead of glass. But when Rowan pushed open the door, Eleanor saw a stone fireplace and a stack of dry wood. He helped her down from the horse. Her legs buckled the moment her feet hit ground. She would have fallen if he hadn't steadied her. "Easy, you're not used to riding." He guided her to sit on a bench inside. "Don't move until feeling comes back." While Eleanor sat there, teeth chattering, Rowan moved with efficient purpose. He got a fire started, proper fire, not the smoky, struggling things she dealt with at Calhoun's. He brought in his saddlebags and the bedroll. He tended to the horse, giving it grain and water from supplies stored in the cabin. Only when the fire was roaring and heat began to fill the small space did he turn his attention to Eleanor. He crouched in front of her, studying her face with that unsettling intensity. "Frostbite?" I don't think so." "Let me see your hands." She held them out. They were white, fingers stiff. Rowan took them in his own hands, surprisingly warm, and examined them carefully. "You're lucky. Another hour and you'd have lost something." He stood and went to his pack, returning with strips of cloth. "This is going to hurt." He was right. As circulation returned to her fingers, the pain was blinding. Eleanor bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood, refusing to cry out. Rowan wrapped her hands in the cloth without comment. Then he handed her a tin cup. "Drink." It was some kind of broth, warm, salty, with bits of dried meat floating in it. Eleanor's stomach, which had been clenched tight with cold and fear, suddenly roared to life. She drank it too fast, burning her tongue. "Slow," Rowan said. "You'll make yourself sick." She forced herself to sip. The warmth spread through her chest, chasing away some of the cold's grip. Rowan settled on the floor across from her, his back against the wall. He had his own cup of broth. For a while, they drank in silence. "You're probably wondering what kind of man does what I did last night," he finally said. Eleanor looked at him over the rim of her cup. "Are you going to tell me?" "The practical kind." He stared into his broth. "I'm 42 years old. I've lived alone in the mountains for 20 years. It's a good life, but it's hard. And it's getting harder. I need help. A partner. Someone who can pull their weight. You could have hired someone. Hired help leaves. Partners stay." His gray eyes met hers. "I'm not looking for romance, Eleanor. I'm not going to lie and pretend this is some fairy tale. What I'm offering is work, a lot of it. And in return, you get a roof, food, and a life that's yours to shape." "Why me, though? Really?" Rowan was quiet for a long moment. "You want the truth?" "Yes." Because everyone else in that room had given up. The men were drunk, angry, or both. The women were already attached or too soft for what I needed, But you, he gestured at her with his cup. You were sitting in that corner peeling potatoes with a dull knife, and you weren't crying, you weren't complaining, you were just doing the work. That's what I need, someone who doesn't quit. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't even kind, really, but it was honest. Eleanor found herself appreciating that more than any pretty words. What if I can't do it? She asked quietly. What if I'm not strong enough? Then you'll get stronger, or you won't, Rowan shrugged. Either way, you'll have chosen it. That's more than most people get. Is that supposed to be comforting? The corner of his mouth twitched. Is it working? Despite everything, the cold, the fear, the insanity of what she'd done, Eleanor felt a laugh bubble up. It came out as a croak, rusty from disuse. No. Didn't think so. But something in his expression had softened slightly. Get some sleep. We've got another hard ride ahead when the sun's higher. Eleanor wanted to ask more questions. About where they were going. About what exactly she'd be doing. About 1,000 things that mattered. But exhaustion hit her like a wave. The warmth of the fire, the food in her belly, the simple relief of not being in Calhoun's kitchen, it all crashed down on her at once. She lay down on the bench, still wrapped in the bedroll. The last thing she saw before sleep took her was Rowan sitting against the wall, eyes closed but posture alert. Even resting, he looked ready to move, like a man who'd learned long ago that safety was temporary. When Eleanor woke, the light outside had changed. Afternoon, maybe. Her whole body screamed with soreness, but the sharp edge of cold was gone. Rowan was outside with the horse. She could hear him talking to it, low, steady words she couldn't make out. She sat up slowly, testing her limbs. Everything hurt, but everything worked. On the floor beside the bench, Rowan had left a pile of clothing. Thick wool pants, a heavy shirt, a coat made of fur and hide. All worn, all far too big for her, but infinitely better than what she had. Eleanor changed quickly, grateful for the privacy. The clothes swallowed her, but she rolled up sleeves and cuffs, cinched the pants with a leather belt. When she emerged from the cabin, Rowan glanced at her and nodded approval. Better. Those will keep you alive. He was checking the horse's hooves. How are you feeling? Sore. That'll get worse before it gets better. We've got 3 more days of riding, maybe 4, depending on weather. 3 more days. Eleanor's legs already felt like jelly, but she nodded. I'll manage. I know you will. He straightened, meeting her eyes. If you couldn't, you'd have stayed in that corner. They rode out as the sun hit its peak, weak winter light filtering through clouds. The trail climbed higher, switching back and forth up the mountainside. Trees grew thicker here, massive pines that blocked out most of the sky. Eleanor's body adapted slowly. The pain became something she could breathe through, work around. She learned to move with the horse instead of fighting it, found the rhythm. Rowan didn't talk much, but when he did, it was practical. He pointed out landmarks, explained which plants were edible, which would kill you, showed her how to tell if snow was stable or ready to slide. Why are you teaching me this? Eleanor asked on the second day. Because you'll need to know it. I'm not always going to be there to tell you what to do. The words sent a chill through her that had nothing to do with temperature. The reality of what she'd signed up for was becoming clearer. This wasn't going to be like working at Calhoun's, where someone always told her what needed doing. In the mountains, ignorance killed you. That night, they made camp in a shallow cave. Rowan built a fire and set rabbit snares while Eleanor gathered firewood. Her arms shook from the effort of carrying logs, but she made trip after trip until Rowan said it was enough. You push yourself hard, he observed, skinning the rabbit he'd caught. Have to. You said it yourself. I need to get stronger. Strength isn't just muscle. It's knowing when to rest before you break. He skewered the meat and set it over the fire. Push too hard, you'll get hurt. Then you're useless. Eleanor sat down heavily, grateful for the excuse. How did you learn all this? Living out here? Grew up doing it. My father was a trapper. Brought me into the mountains when I was 7. I've been here ever since. You never wanted to leave? Go to a city? Rowan was quiet for a moment, watching the fire. Cities are full of people. People lie. People take. People judge you for things that don't matter and ignore things that do. He turned the rabbit on its spit. Mountains don't lie. They'll kill you, sure, but they're honest about it. Eleanor understood that more than she wanted to admit. They ate in comfortable silence. The rabbit was tough, gamey, nothing like the food at Calhoun's. It was also the best thing Eleanor had tasted in years. Earned food. Free food. Tomorrow we'll reach the homestead, Rowan said, feeding the fire. It's not much. 1 room, loft for sleeping, root cellar, smokehouse. I've been building it for 15 years. Alone? Mostly. Had help sometimes in the early days, but yeah, mostly alone. Eleanor tried to imagine it. Spending 15 years building a home by yourself in the wilderness. The determination that would take. The loneliness. What made you decide you needed someone? She couldn't quite bring herself to say wife. Practical reasons. I'm getting older, work's getting harder, and… He paused, choosing words carefully. There's things I want to build that need 2 pairs of hands. A better barn, fences, maybe even livestock eventually. Can't do it alone anymore. That's all? Rowan looked at her, firelight reflecting in his pale eyes. You want me to say something about companionship? About not wanting to die alone? I could. It'd even be true. But that's not why I chose you. Then why? Because you're tired of being invisible, and I'm tired of being alone. Seemed like we could fix both problems. It was the most vulnerable thing he'd said since they'd met. Eleanor felt something shift in her chest. Not love, nothing so dramatic, but recognition. 2 people who'd been worn down by life in different ways, taking a gamble on each other. Will we… She stopped, unsure how to ask. Sleep together? Rowan's bluntness startled her. Eventually, probably. If you want. I'm not going to force anything, Eleanor. When and if it happens, it'll be your choice. Same as leaving that trading post was. Eleanor felt her face heat, grateful for the darkness. Okay. But we should probably get married first. Legal-like. There's a circuit preacher who comes through in spring. We can do it then, if you're still around. You think I might not be? Rowan shrugged. First winter's hard. You might decide it's not worth it. If you do, I won't stop you from leaving. But I won't make it easy either. You'll have to walk out same as you walked in, on your own 2 feet. It should have sounded cruel. Instead, it sounded fair. I'll still be here in spring, Eleanor said. We'll see. The next morning brought snow. Not the gentle, pretty kind from children's stories. This was wind-driven, stinging, the kind that erased the trail and made every direction look the same. Rowan didn't seem concerned. He guided the horse with confidence, following landmarks Eleanor couldn't even see. When she asked how he knew where to go, he just tapped his temple. 20 years I could find my way home blind. By afternoon, the snow had stopped, but the world had transformed. Everything was white, pristine, untouched, beautiful in a way that could kill you if you weren't careful. There, Rowan said, pointing ahead. Eleanor looked. At first she saw nothing but trees and snow. Then the shapes resolved. A cabin, smaller than she'd expected but solid-looking. Smoke rose from the chimney. You left a fire going? She asked. No, someone's there. Rowan's tone had changed, gone cold. His hand moved to something under his coat. A weapon, Eleanor realized. They approached slowly. The horse's ears were up, alert. As they got closer, Eleanor saw footprints in the snow, fresh ones. Rowan dismounted in one smooth motion. Stay here, he told Eleanor. If I shout, you ride back the way we came. Don't stop. Understand? Eleanor nodded, fear tight in her throat. Rowan approached the cabin with that same smoke-like movement, making no sound despite the snow. He pushed the door open and Eleanor held her breath. A moment passed, then another. It's fine, Rowan called. Come in. Eleanor slid off the horse, less gracefully than him, and hurried to the cabin. Inside, warmth hit her like a wall. A fire roared in the hearth. And standing by it, looking sheepish, was a native man about Rowan's age. This is Joseph, Rowan said. Old friend. Apparently helping himself to my firewood. Joseph grinned. Your firewood? Last I checked, the forest doesn't belong to you, Hale. The forest I cut it from does. But there was no heat in Rowan's words. Eleanor, Joseph sometimes traps up here. We trade. He's harmless. Harmless, Joseph repeated, looking amused. He studied Eleanor with open curiosity. So the rumors are true. Rowan Hale finally found himself a woman. Found herself a choice, Rowan corrected. Eleanor, you want coffee? It took Eleanor a moment to realize he was asking her, not Joseph, like she had a say, like this was her home too. Yes, she managed. Please. While Rowan made coffee, Joseph explained he'd been checking his trap lines and stopped at the cabin to warm up. Didn't expect you back so soon. Thought you'd spend more time down at Calhoun's. Had what I needed. Rowan handed Eleanor a cup. How's the season? Thin. Too warm early. Scared off the good pelts. You? Haven't been out yet. Been preparing. Joseph's eyes flicked to Eleanor. I see that. The two men talked shop, trap placement, weather patterns, a territorial dispute with another trapper. Eleanor sipped her coffee and looked around what would be her home. The cabin was sparse. One large room with the hearth, a table, 2 chairs, shelves holding supplies. A loft accessible by ladder, presumably where the bed was. Everything clean, organized, practical. No decorations, no softness. But it was solid. The walls didn't leak, the floor didn't rot. The fire drew properly. It was more than she'd had in 3 years. Joseph left after an hour, promising to check back in spring. You need anything? Send word, he told Rowan. Then to Eleanor. You're braver than you look coming up here. Most women wouldn't last a week. Most women are smarter than me, Eleanor said. Joseph laughed, surprised, genuine. She's got spine. You might actually make this work, Hale. After he left, the cabin felt very quiet, very small. Just Eleanor and Rowan and the crackling fire. This is it, Rowan said. Home. Eleanor looked around again, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't just shelter. This was possibility. A space that could be shaped, improved, made into something more. Where do we start? She asked. Rowan smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost approachable. First, we get you properly outfitted. Those clothes are too big. Need to adjust them, get you boots that fit. Then tomorrow, we start teaching you everything you need to know. Everything? How to chop wood without taking off a toe. How to cook over an open fire. How to tell if the ice on the creek is safe to walk on. How to shoot. He paused. How to survive when I'm not here. That last one hung in the air. You're going to leave me alone? Eleanor couldn't keep the fear from her voice. Sometimes. Not yet. Not until you're ready. But eventually, yes. I'll have to run trap lines, hunt, trade. Can't always take you with me. His expression softened. I'm not abandoning you. I'm preparing you. Eleanor took a shaky breath. Okay. You're scared. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you careful. It's the people who aren't scared who die stupid deaths. Rowan moved to the shelves and started pulling down supplies. But we've got time. Winter's just starting. By spring, you'll know enough to keep yourself alive. That night, Eleanor climbed the ladder to the loft for the first time. The space was small, just room for a bed, a real bed, not a pile of straw, and a trunk. You take the bed, Rowan said from below. I'll sleep by the fire tonight. That's not, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, but we both need proper rest, and that bed's not big enough for both of us to sleep without touching. When you're ready for that, you'll tell me. Until then, I've got blankets. Eleanor lay down on the bed, still wearing the 2 big clothes. The mattress was stuffed with something, pine needles maybe, and it crackled when she moved, but it was soft, clean. Below, she heard Rowan settling by the fire, adding logs, the homey sounds of someone preparing for sleep. She'd done it, actually done it, left everything she knew for a life with a stranger in the wilderness. Eleanor closed her eyes and waited for regret to hit. It didn't come. What came instead was something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Longer, maybe. Hope. Small. Fragile, but real. She fell asleep to the sound of the fire crackling and snow falling outside. And for the first time in memory, she wasn't afraid of what tomorrow would bring. Tomorrow would bring work. Challenge. Pain, probably. But it would be hers. Morning came with a violence Eleanor wasn't prepared for. She woke to Rowan shaking her shoulder, his hand rough through the blanket. Up. Sun's been up an hour already. Eleanor's body screamed protest. Every muscle had stiffened overnight, the riding and cold welding her joints into something that barely moved. She tried to sit up and gasped at the pain shooting through her back. Hurts, doesn't it? Rowan was already dressed, hair tied back. Move anyway. Staying still makes it worse. She forced herself upright, biting back a whimper. The loft was freezing. Her breath came out in white puffs. Below, she could hear the fire crackling, but the heat hadn't reached this high. How long do I have? Her voice came out scratchy. 5 minutes? Then we eat and start work. 5 minutes. Eleanor climbed down the ladder like an old woman, each rung an individual torture. Rowan had laid out different clothes for her on the table, still too big, but he'd clearly tried to find smaller sizes from somewhere. These were my mother's, he said, not looking at her. She was bigger than most women. They might fit better. Eleanor changed by the fire, grateful for the warmth and the privacy Rowan gave her by focusing intently on the pot he was stirring. The clothes did fit better, not perfect, but closer. The wool shirt only needed the sleeves rolled twice instead of 4 times. Breakfast was porridge, thick, unsweetened, filling. Eleanor forced it down despite her stomach's rebellion. She'd learned at Calhoun's that you ate when food was available, whether you wanted it or not. First thing you need to learn is the land, Rowan said, scraping his bowl clean. Where the water is, where the game trails run, which areas are safe, which aren't. We'll walk the property today. How much property? Not property, exactly. Can't own land out here, not legally, but there's about 40 square miles I consider my territory. We'll cover maybe a quarter of that today. 40 square miles. Eleanor had never traveled more than 5 miles from Calhoun's in her entire life. They set out as soon as the bowls were clean. Rowan moved fast, his legs eating up ground while Eleanor struggled to keep pace. The snow was knee-deep in places, and she didn't have his knack for finding the path of least resistance. Keep up, he called back. I'm not slowing down. I'm trying, she gasped. Try harder. It wasn't cruelty. She understood that much. This was the lesson. The mountains wouldn't slow down for her weakness. Either she kept pace or she got left behind. Eleanor pushed harder. Her lungs burned, her legs shook, but she didn't fall behind. Rowan showed her the creek first, partially frozen, water still running underneath in a dark channel. This feeds the homestead. Never drink downstream from where the animals cross. See that bend there? That's upstream. Always fill your water there. He pointed out landmarks. A lightning-struck pine split down the middle, a rock formation that looked like a broken tooth, a clearing where deer bedded down at night. If you get lost, which you will eventually, these will get you home. The creek always flows toward the cabin. Follow it upstream, you'll hit the homestead within 2 miles. What if the creek's frozen solid? Then you better not get lost. They climbed higher. Eleanor's thighs screamed, but she kept moving. Rowan stopped at a ridge overlooking a narrow valley. Elk winter down there. When we need meat, that's where we hunt. He glanced at her. You ever fire a gun? No? That changes today. Can't have you out here defenseless. Defenseless against what? Rowan's expression went flat. Bears, mountain lions, wolves. Men, sometimes, trappers who think being alone means being easy prey. You need to be able to protect yourself when I'm not around. The casual way he said it made Eleanor's stomach clench. She thought the biggest danger would be cold or hunger. She hadn't considered predators, human or otherwise. They walked for hours. By midday, Eleanor's legs were rubber. She stumbled over a hidden root and went down hard, snow filling her mouth and nose. Rowan was there before she could push herself up, hauling her to her feet. You hurt? No, just her pride. Then keep moving. We're not even halfway done. Eleanor wanted to scream at him, wanted to collapse, wanted to demand why he was pushing so hard so fast. Instead, she wiped snow from her face and kept walking, because stopping meant admitting she couldn't do this. And if she couldn't do this, where would she go? Back to Calhoun's kitchen? Back to that corner and that stool and that endless grinding nothing? No. She'd crawl through the snow on her hands and knees before she'd go back. Rowan must have seen something change in her face because he nodded slightly. Good. You're starting to understand. They returned to the cabin as the sun hit the horizon, painting the snow orange and pink. Beautiful, if Eleanor had any energy left to appreciate it. She collapsed on the bench inside, beyond exhaustion. Rowan handed her water. Drink, all of it. She obeyed mechanically. Now eat. He thrust dried meat at her. Your body needs fuel. I'm too tired to chew. Chew anyway. Eleanor ate because refusing seemed harder than complying. The meat was tough, salty, endless, but eventually she got it down. You did better than I expected, Rowan said, starting on his own meal. Thought you'd quit after the first hour. I almost did. But you didn't. That's what matters. He studied her across the firelight. Tomorrow will be worse. Your muscles haven't recovered yet. You'll be stiff, slow. We're doing it again anyway. Why? The word came out broken. Because one day, your life might depend on knowing this land. I'd rather you hurt now than die later because you didn't know where to find water or how to get home. He paused. This isn't punishment, Eleanor. This is preparation. She understood. Didn't make it hurt less, but she understood. That night, she climbed to the loft and passed out before her head fully hit the pillow. No time for fear or second thoughts or anything but the deep, dreamless sleep of complete exhaustion. The next morning was worse. Rowan hadn't lied about that. Eleanor's legs had seized up completely overnight. Getting down the ladder took 10 minutes, each movement agony. Move through it, Rowan said. No sympathy, just fact. They went out again. Different direction this time. Rowan showed her the best trees for firewood, dead standing timber that hadn't rotted yet. Showed her how to check if a branch was safe to walk on or would crack under weight. Taught her to read snow depth by the way it gathered on pine branches. Eleanor absorbed it all through a haze of pain, but she absorbed it. On the third day, Rowan handed her an axe. Time to learn to chop wood, not just gather it, chop it. The axe was heavier than she expected. Eleanor lifted it, trying to mimic the swing she'd seen Rowan make 100 times. The blade glanced off the log and buried itself in the snow. Again, Rowan said. She tried again, same result. You're muscling it. Let the weight do the work. Lift, aim, guide it down. The axe wants to split wood. You just have to let it. 20 swings later, Eleanor's arms were jelly, and she'd managed to split exactly one log. It wasn't even a clean split. The wood had splintered messily. Better, Rowan said. Keep going. My arms. We'll get stronger. Keep going. By the time he let her stop, Eleanor had split maybe 10 logs. Rowan had split 50 in the same time, each stroke clean and efficient. The difference in their ability was humiliating. Stop comparing, Rowan said, like he could read her mind. I've been doing this for 35 years. You've been doing it for an hour. You're doing fine. I'm useless. You're learning, not the same thing. He gathered the split wood. Come on, next lesson. Next lesson was fire building. Rowan dumped out their morning fire and made Eleanor rebuild it from scratch. You've got flint, steel, and tinder. Make fire. Eleanor had watched him do this every morning. It looked simple. Strike the steel against the flint, catch a spark in the tinder, blow it into flame. Her first attempt produced no spark. Neither did her second, or fifth, or 20th. Angle's wrong, Rowan said. Flatter. You want the steel to scrape, not bounce. She adjusted. A tiny spark jumped. Died before hitting the tinder. Closer. Hold them closer together. Another spark. This one caught in the dried moss she was using for tinder. Eleanor blew on it gently, the way Rowan had shown her. Too hard. The ember died. Steady breaths, like you're warming your hands, not blowing out a candle. She tried again. The spark grew, smoking. She added more tinder, blowing steadily. The smoke thickened. A tiny flame appeared. Eleanor felt a surge of triumph, immediately extinguished when the flame guttered out. Don't stop breathing on it just because you see fire. It's not caught yet. Again. It took her 2 hours to successfully build a fire. 2 hours of sparks and smoke and failure. When the flames finally caught and held, Eleanor sat back on her heels, hands shaking. There, Rowan said. Now you can make fire. Do it again. What? Put it out. Build another one. You need to be able to do this cold, wet, exhausted, in the dark. Once isn't enough. Eleanor wanted to cry. Wanted to throw the flint and steel across the cabin. Wanted to ask why everything had to be so hard. Instead, she dumped snow on her fire and started over. By the end of the week, Eleanor could build a fire in under 20 minutes. Not as fast as Rowan's 2 minutes, but functional. She could split wood without hitting herself, could walk 5 miles without stopping to rest, could identify a dozen different plants and trees by sight. Small victories. but they were hers. "You're tougher than you look," Rowan observed one evening. They were sitting by the fire, him mending a trap while she practiced making rope from plant fibers. "Most people would have run by now." "Where would I run to?" "Fair point." He tested the trap's spring mechanism. "But still, you could have made me take you back, could have demanded it. I'd have done it if you really insisted." Eleanor hadn't considered that. "Would you? I'm not keeping you prisoner. This only works if you choose it." He set down the trap. "So why haven't you asked?" She thought about it while her fingers worked the fibers. "Because at Calhoun's, I spent 3 years being told I was worthless, useless, too big, too slow, too stupid to be worth anything." She met his eyes. "Here, I'm still too slow, still learning, still failing most of what I try. But you don't look at me like I'm worthless. You look at me like I'm in progress. You are in progress. That's better than being nothing." Rowan nodded slowly. "I understand that more than you'd think." Before Eleanor could ask what he meant, a sound cut through the night. Howling. Close. Rowan was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. "Wolves!" Pack by the sound of it. Eleanor's heart hammered. "Are we safe?" "In here, yes. They won't try the cabin." He listened for a moment longer. "But the meat in the smokehouse, that's what they're after." He grabbed his rifle from above the door and a torch from beside the fireplace. "Stay inside, bar the door after me. Don't open it for anything that doesn't sound like me." "Wait, you're going out there?" "I'm not losing a month's worth of smoked meat to wolves." He was already at the door. "Bar it, Eleanor. Now!" He slipped out into the darkness. Eleanor shoved the heavy wooden bar into place with shaking hands, then ran to the window. The torch cast wild shadows across the snow. She could see Rowan moving toward the small structure behind the cabin, the smokehouse. Could see shapes moving in the darkness beyond the torchlight, low, lean shapes that reflected the firelight in their eyes. A gunshot cracked the night. One of the shapes yelped and scattered. The pack retreated, but they didn't leave. They circled, keeping just beyond the torch's reach. Rowan fired again. This time they ran, melting into the forest like smoke. Eleanor waited, breath held, until she heard his voice at the door. "It's me. Let me in." She lifted the bar. Rowan entered, bringing cold air and the smell of gunpowder with him. "They get anything?" "No, but they'll be back. Pack's hungry, and they've marked this place now." He set down the rifle and torch. "We'll need to reinforce the smokehouse. Put up better barriers." "Can I help?" "You'll have to. I can't watch it every night." He looked at her, something shifting in his expression. "You weren't afraid." "I was terrified." "But you asked if you could help. Not if I'd protect you." The corner of his mouth lifted. "You're learning the right lessons." Over the next few days, they reinforced the smokehouse. Heavy logs positioned to block entry. Additional latches. A bell system that would ring if something tried to force the door. Eleanor learned to load the rifle, though Rowan wouldn't let her fire it yet. "Ammunition's too valuable to waste on practice. When we have more time, I'll teach you properly." The wolves came back twice more, but the new barriers held. Eventually, they moved on to easier prey. The work never stopped. There was always something: water to haul, wood to chop, food to prepare, tools to mend. Eleanor fell into bed each night destroyed and woke each morning to do it again. But something was changing. Her hands, soft and scarred from kitchen work, developed new calluses. Her arms stopped shaking when she lifted the axe. Her lungs adapted to the thin mountain air. She was getting stronger. A month into her new life, Rowan announced they were going hunting. "Me?" Eleanor said. "I don't know how to—" "Then it's time to learn. We need fresh meat, and you need to know how to get it when I'm not here." They left before dawn, Rowan carrying the rifle and Eleanor carrying a pack with supplies. He led her to the valley he'd shown her that first day, moving slowly now, teaching her to step quietly, to watch where she placed her feet, to read the signs animals left behind. "There," he whispered, pointing to tracks in the snow. "Elk. Big bull, probably. See how deep the prints are?" Eleanor nodded, afraid to speak. They followed the tracks for over an hour, Rowan reading the story in the snow like text. The elk had bedded down here, grazed there, crossed the creek at this point. And then they saw it. Massive, with antlers that seemed too large for its head. The bull was feeding in a clearing, unaware of their presence. Rowan handed Eleanor the rifle. She stared at him, panic rising. You, he mouthed. She shook her head frantically. He leaned close, breath warm against her ear. You can do this. Brace the stock against your shoulder. See the notch at the end of the barrel? Line that up with the V-sight closer to you. Put both on the animal's shoulder. Breathe out slowly and squeeze the trigger. Don't jerk it. Eleanor's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the rifle. Breathe, Rowan whispered. You've got this. She didn't have this. She'd never shot anything in her life, never even held a gun until 2 weeks ago. But Rowan trusted her with it. With this, the same way he trusted her to build fires and split wood and learn the land. Eleanor raised the rifle, found the sights. The elk's shoulder swam in her vision. She breathed out the way he'd taught her and squeezed. The rifle kicked harder than she expected. The boom echoed across the valley. And the elk, it stumbled, took 2 steps, fell. Clean shot, Rowan said, pride clear in his voice. You did it. Eleanor lowered the rifle, staring at the fallen animal. She'd just killed something, taken a life. She waited for guilt, for horror. What came instead was a strange, fierce satisfaction. She'd done something necessary, provided food, proven she could. Come on, Rowan said. Now comes the hard part. The hard part was field dressing the elk. Rowan talked her through it, showing her where to cut, how to separate the meat from the hide. It was brutal, bloody work. Eleanor's stomach churned, but she didn't look away. This is respect, Rowan said, his hands steady as he worked. The animal died to feed us. We use everything we can, waste nothing. They packed out the meat in multiple trips, Eleanor carrying loads that would have crushed her a month ago. Her back screamed, her legs trembled, but she made every trip. That night, they ate fresh elk steaks. Eleanor had never tasted anything better. Not because the meat was exceptional, but because she'd earned it. Every bite was proof she could survive here. You're going to make it, Rowan said across the fire. What? Through winter. I wasn't sure at first, but you're going to make it. He took another bite. Most people can't adapt like you have. They fight the mountain, try to make it be something it's not. You're learning to work with it instead. Eleanor felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. I had a good teacher. I'm not that good. Mostly I just throw you at problems and see if you figure them out. That's terrible teaching. It's honest teaching. I can't be here to solve every problem for you. Better you learn to solve them yourself. He set down his plate. In 2 weeks I need to run my trap lines. I'll be gone 3 days, maybe 4. You'll be alone here. The warmth evaporated. Already? You're ready, or you will be by then. We'll spend the next 2 weeks preparing, making sure you know what to do if something goes wrong. But Eleanor, you need to be able to handle this place without me. That's not negotiable. She wanted to argue, to say 2 months wasn't enough time, that she was still learning, still failing half of what she tried. But she looked at her hands, strong now, capable. Looked at the meat she'd hunted herself, the fire she'd built. Okay, she said, I'll be ready. The next 2 weeks were intense. Rowan drilled her on everything, what to do if the fire went out, if a predator approached, if she got injured. He made her practice until she could handle each scenario without thinking. He taught her to shoot properly, setting up targets behind the cabin. Eleanor burned through precious ammunition, learning to hit them, but Rowan insisted. Bullets can be replaced. You can't. She learned to set snares for small game, to check the traps without getting her fingers caught, to preserve meat if something spoiled. And finally, Rowan taught her to handle the rifle in real situations, not targets, animals. She killed a deer on her own, field dressed it, packed it out. The second time was easier than the first. The night before Rowan left, Eleanor lay in the loft, unable to sleep. Below, she heard him preparing his pack. The sounds were familiar now, the rustle of canvas, the clink of metal. You awake up there? He called quietly. Yes. Come down. Want to talk to you. She climbed down to find him sitting by the fire, his pack mostly ready. He gestured for her to sit. I know you're scared, he said without preamble. That's smart. Being alone out here is dangerous. But you're capable, Eleanor. More capable than you think. What if something happens? Then you handle it, same as you'd handle it if I was here, because I'm not always going to have the answers. He poked at the fire. But if something goes really wrong, If you get badly hurt, or the cabin catches fire, or there's some emergency you can't manage, Joseph usually checks his northern traps this time of month. You can reach his territory in a day if you follow the creek east. He'll help if you need it. Eleanor nodded, filing that away. But I don't think you'll need it, Rowan continued. I think you're going to be fine. Maybe a little bored. Definitely lonely, but fine. How can you be sure? He looked at her, firelight reflecting in those pale eyes. Because I've watched you fight through every single thing I've thrown at you. You don't quit. That's worth more than skill or strength or anything else out here. Something passed between them in that moment. Not romance, still too early for that, but partnership, recognition, trust. Don't die out there, Eleanor said. Planning not to. You don't die in here. Planning not to. Rowan smiled. Good. Then we'll see each other in a few days and you can tell me how boring it was being alone. But they both knew it wouldn't be boring. They both knew it would be a test. The next morning, Rowan left before dawn. Eleanor stood in the cabin doorway, watching him disappear into the pre-dawn darkness. The forest swallowed him in minutes, and then she was alone. Completely alone. The silence was different without him. Heavier. Every creak of the cabin settling sounded threatening. Every gust of wind carried potential danger. Eleanor made herself breathe, made herself go back inside, made herself start the day the way Rowan had taught her. Fire first, then breakfast, then water, then work. The routine helped, gave her something to focus on besides the fear. She checked the snares, 3 rabbits. Good. She cleaned and skinned them, the process automatic now. Hung the meat to smoke, chopped wood until her arms ached, hauled water from the creek, checked the smokehouse, the supplies, the rifle. By midday, she'd run out of urgent tasks. The cabin was clean, the fire fed, everything in order. Eleanor sat by the fire and listened to the mountain, wind in the pines, the distant crack of ice. Somewhere far off, a bird called. She was alone on a mountain in the middle of winter, and she was still alive. More than alive. She was capable. The realization hit her like warmth spreading through cold limbs. She didn't need Rowan here to survive. She could do this herself. That night, Eleanor climbed to the loft with a confidence she'd never felt before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The day after, more. Eventually, Rowan would return, and this test would be over. But even when he came back, something fundamental had changed. She wasn't the woman he'd chosen from Calhoun's kitchen anymore. She was becoming something else entirely. On the second day alone, the stranger arrived. Eleanor was splitting wood behind the cabin when she heard it, the soft crunch of footsteps in snow. Not the random pattern of an animal, deliberate, human. Her hands froze on the axe handle. Rowan's words echoed in her head. Men, sometimes, trappers who think being alone means being easy prey. She set down the axe carefully, keeping her movements slow. Natural, like she hadn't noticed anything. Then she walked toward the cabin door, pulse hammering in her throat. The rifle was inside, above the fireplace, loaded, like Rowan had insisted. Eleanor made it 3 steps before the voice stopped her. Easy now, don't mean any harm. She turned. A man stood at the tree line, hands visible and empty. He was younger than Rowan, maybe 30, with a patchy beard and clothes that had seen better days. A pack hung from his shoulders. No visible weapons, but that didn't mean he wasn't carrying. Didn't mean to startle you, he continued, offering a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Saw the smoke. Thought I'd check if Rowan was around. Eleanor's mind raced. Admit she was alone? Lie and say Rowan was inside? Every option felt like a trap. He's not here right now, she said carefully. Neutral. Not quite a lie. That's so. The man took a step closer. Eleanor fought the urge to retreat. You're the woman he brought up from Calhoun's. Eleanor, right? Word travels, even out here. Who are you? Name's Carter. I trapped the territory west of here. Another step. Heard Rowan finally got himself a wife. Didn't believe it until now. Something about the way he said wife made Eleanor's skin crawl, like he was tasting the word, testing it. What do you want? She kept her voice level. Just being neighborly? It's a hard life up here. Thought you might appreciate some company, seeing as you're new and all. His eyes drifted past her to the cabin. Rowan inside? He'll be back soon. How soon? Soon enough. Eleanor shifted slightly, angling herself between Carter and the cabin door. I appreciate you stopping by, but I've got work to finish. Work can wait, can it? Must get lonely up here all by yourself. Carter's smile widened. How about I come in, warm up by the fire? We can talk. Get to know each other. No. The word came out harder than she intended. Carter's expression flickered. Just for a second, the friendly mask slipped, and Eleanor saw something cold underneath. That's not very hospitable. I don't know you. You're not coming in my home. Your home? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've been here, 2 months? This is Rowan's home. You're just what? Eleanor cut him off. Her fear was transforming into something sharper. Anger. Say it. Carter's eyes narrowed. The pretense of friendliness evaporated completely. You're awful bold for a woman alone on a mountain. I'm not alone. I told you Rowan will be back soon. See, I don't think that's true. I saw him heading north 3 days ago. He's running his trap lines. Won't be back for at least another day, maybe 2. Carter took another step. Which means you're alone, and it's just you and me having a conversation. Eleanor's hand moved toward the axe she'd left propped against the woodpile. Carter noticed. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Then I'd suggest you leave. Eleanor wrapped her fingers around the axe handle. It wasn't the rifle, but it was something. Now. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Eleanor could see Carter calculating, weighing his options. She was bigger than most women, strong from 2 months of hard labor, armed with an axe. But he was bigger still, and probably faster. The question was whether he thought she'd actually use it. Eleanor lifted the axe, holding it across her body. Not threatening yet, but ready. I won't ask again. Carter raised his hand slowly, backing up a step. All right. No need for that. Like I said, just being neighborly. Then be neighborly somewhere else. He backed toward the tree line, that cold smile back on his face. You know, Rowan can't watch you every second. Might want to remember that. Mountains are dangerous. All kinds of things can happen to a woman alone. I'll take my chances. I'm sure you will. Carter disappeared into the trees, but Eleanor could still hear him moving, taking his time, making sure she knew he wasn't hurrying away. Eleanor stood frozen, axe gripped so tight her knuckles went white, until she couldn't hear him anymore. Then she waited another 5 minutes, listening to nothing but wind and her own ragged breathing. Only when she was certain he was truly gone did she allow herself to move. She grabbed the wood she'd split and ran for the cabin, slamming the door behind her. The bar dropped into place with a heavy thunk. Eleanor leaned against the door, chest heaving. Her hands were shaking now. The delayed reaction hitting hard. That man had been testing her, seeing if she'd be easy prey. If Rowan had been there, Carter probably would have been friendly, helpful even. But alone, she'd been something else. An opportunity. Eleanor forced herself to breathe slowly. To think. He knew Rowan was gone, knew she was alone. And he'd left, yes, but would he come back? She went to the window, peering out through the gap in the shutters. Nothing moved in the trees, but that didn't mean nothing was there. Eleanor retrieved the rifle from above the fireplace and checked the load. 5 rounds. She had more ammunition in Rowan's trunk, but 5 would have to be enough. She spent the rest of the day inside, watching through the windows. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like a man. Night fell with agonizing slowness. Eleanor built up the fire, loaded more wood than necessary. Light meant safety. Darkness meant vulnerability. She dragged one of the chairs to face the door and sat with the rifle across her lap. Sleep wasn't an option. Not tonight. The hours crawled past. Outside, the temperature dropped. Ice cracked in the trees with sounds like breaking bones. Wind howled around the cabin's corners. And then, around midnight, she heard it. Footsteps. Circling the cabin. Eleanor's breath caught. She stood slowly, rifle raised, moving to the window. In the moonlight reflecting off snow, she could just make out a shape, man-sized, moving deliberately around the perimeter, testing the shutters, checking the door. I know you're out there, Eleanor called. Her voice didn't shake. Good. I've got a rifle aimed at the door. You try to come through it. I will shoot you. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then Carter's voice, muffled by the walls. You ever kill a man before, Eleanor? She didn't answer. Didn't think so. It's different than killing an elk. Lot harder. You sure you can do it? Eleanor moved the rifle barrel to point directly at where his voice was coming from. Try the door and find out. More silence. Longer this time. Rowan's got you trained good, Carter finally said. I'll give him that, but he can't be here all the time, and eventually you're going to be alone again. Something to think about. The footsteps resumed, moving away from the cabin, fading into the distance. Eleanor didn't lower the rifle, didn't move from her position. This could be another test. He could be waiting just out of sight, hoping she'd relax. She stayed at the window until dawn broke, rifle ready, watching the tree line. Carter didn't come back. But Eleanor didn't sleep. When morning finally came, she was exhausted, wired on fear and adrenaline. She made herself eat something, forcing down bread she couldn't taste, made herself drink water, made herself think. Carter had left, but he'd made his point. She was vulnerable alone, and he could come back any time. Eleanor checked the cabin's defenses with new eyes. The bar on the door was solid, but the shutters had gaps. The roof had weak spots. There were a dozen ways someone determined could get inside if they really wanted to. She spent the morning reinforcing what she could, drove wedges into the shutter frames to make them harder to force. Moved Rowan's heavy trunk against the door as an additional barrier, found rope and rigged a crude alarm system across the windows. If someone forced them open, a pot would fall and make noise. It wasn't much, but it was something. By midday, Eleanor had moved past fear into something colder. Calculation. Carter had tried to scare her, had probably expected her to panic, to run to Joseph for help, to prove she couldn't handle life up here. Instead, she was fortifying, planning, preparing to defend what was hers. Because this cabin, this life, it was hers now. Not just Rowan's, hers. And she'd be damned if some predator in man's clothing took that from her. That night, she slept in shifts. 2 hours awake, 2 hours of restless dozing, rifle always within reach. No one came. The mountain was quiet except for the usual sounds: wind, animals, ice. On the fourth day Rowan came home. Eleanor heard the horse before she saw it. She was at the window instantly, rifle raised until she recognized the bay gelding, saw Rowan's familiar silhouette. She had the door open before he dismounted, relief flooding through her so intensely her knees went weak. Rowan took one look at her face and his expression hardened. What happened? Eleanor told him everything: Carter's visit, the testing questions, the circling at night, the threats. Rowan's jaw clenched tighter with every word. By the time she finished, he looked like he wanted to break something. Carter, he said flatly, that worthless piece of... He cut himself off, visibly controlling his temper. Did he touch you? No, I didn't let him get close enough. Good. Rowan moved through the cabin, checking her improvised defenses. His expression shifted from anger to something that might have been pride. You did this? I didn't know what else to do. This was smart. All of it. He examined the alarm system she'd rigged. Most people would have panicked. Run. You stayed and fortified. He was trying to scare me. He was testing you, seeing if you'd be an easy target. Rowan's voice went cold. He won't try again. How can you know that? Because I'm going to make sure he understands the consequences if he does. Rowan checked the rifle, noted it was still loaded. You kept this ready. Good. Did you sleep? Some. Not enough from the look of you. Go rest. I'll keep watch. Eleanor wanted to argue that she was fine, but exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. What are you going to do about Carter? Nothing you need to worry about. Just rest. She climbed to the loft, her body grateful for the mattress. But sleep didn't come easily. Below, she could hear Rowan moving around, packing something, checking supplies. When she woke hours later, it was dark outside. Rowan was gone. The horse was gone. But there was a note on the table, written in his rough hand. Stay inside, back by morning. Load the rifle if anyone comes. Eleanor looked out the window into the darkness, wondering what Rowan was doing, where he'd gone. She didn't have to wonder long. He returned just before dawn, the horse breathing hard like it had been pushed. Rowan's knuckles were split, bleeding. There was a dark stain on his shirt that might have been blood, his or someone else's. Eleanor couldn't tell. It's handled, was all he said. What does that mean? It means Carter won't be a problem anymore. Rowan washed his hands in the water basin, wincing as soap hit the broken skin. He's leaving this territory, moving south, won't be coming back. Did you kill him? No, but I made it clear what would happen if he ever came near you again. Rowan dried his hands carefully. You don't need details, Eleanor. You just need to know you're safe. She wanted those details, wanted to know exactly what Rowan had done, what he was capable of. But looking at his face, hard, cold, utterly certain, she decided she didn't need to know after all. Thank you, she said quietly. Rowan looked at her for a long moment. You held your ground, didn't run, didn't break. That's what kept you safe. I just reinforced the message. Over the next few days, life returned to normal, or what passed for normal on the mountain. Rowan taught Eleanor to shoot properly, using real ammunition this time. She wasn't a natural, but she got competent, enough to hit what she aimed at from reasonable distance. You'll never be a sharpshooter, Rowan observed after she missed the target twice in a row. But you don't need to be. Just need to be good enough to make someone think twice. Eleanor fired again. This time the shot hit the edge of the target. Good enough? Getting there. They worked on other skills too, setting more complex traps, reading weather patterns, identifying which ice was safe to cross. And slowly, something shifted between them. It wasn't dramatic, no grand declarations or moments of realization, just small changes. Rowan started asking her opinion on things, where to set traps, how to organize the smokehouse. Started teaching her not just survival skills, but his reasoning behind decisions. Eleanor stopped thinking of the cabin as Rowan's place and started thinking of it as ours. One evening, about a week after Carter's visit, they were working together to repair a damaged section of roof. Rowan was on top, Eleanor below, handing up materials. You ever regret it? He asked suddenly. Coming here? Eleanor considered the question. I regret how hard it is. How much everything hurts. How scared I get sometimes. That's not the same as regret. No, she agreed. It's not. Do you regret bringing me? Rowan paused in his hammering. No, though I worried I'd made a mistake those first few weeks. Thought maybe I'd asked too much too fast. You did ask too much too fast. I know, but you rose to it anyway. He resumed working. Most people can't do that, can't push past their limits. You can. I didn't have much choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose to fight instead of fold. That's not nothing. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Rowan said, There's a circuit preacher comes through in spring, usually stops at Joseph's camp around April. We should go see him. Eleanor's hand stilled on the board she was holding. To get married? Unless you don't want to. I thought we agreed to wait, see if I lasted the winter. You've already lasted the winter. The worst parts, anyway. March and April are easier. You'll make it. Rowan looked down at her from the roof. So the question is whether you want to. Make it legal, I mean. Eleanor thought about it. Marriage to Rowan wouldn't be like marriages she'd seen at Calhoun's, those desperate unions or loveless arrangements. This would be a partnership. Equal work, equal say, equal standing. Yes, she said. I want to. Good. Then we'll make the trip when the preacher comes. He went back to hammering, but Eleanor caught a smile on his face before he turned away. Winter began loosening its grip slowly. The days got marginally longer. The snow stopped falling as frequently. Animals started moving more, emerging from wherever they'd sheltered during the worst months. And Eleanor kept learning. Rowan took her on longer trips now, overnight excursions to check distant trap lines. She learned to make camp in the snow, to keep a fire burning all night, to wake at any unusual sound. On one trip, they encountered a black bear just emerging from hibernation. The animal was groggy, disoriented, but still dangerous. Rowan froze, hand on his rifle, watching. The bear sniffed the air, located them, and made a mock charge, testing to see if they'd run. Eleanor forced herself to stand still. Every instinct screamed at her to bolt, but Rowan had taught her, running triggers their chase response. The bear stopped 20 feet away, huffing. Then it turned and ambled off, uninterested in prey that didn't act like prey. Good, Rowan said once it was gone. Your first bear. You didn't run. I wanted to. Everyone wants to. Doing it anyway is what counts. They found a good spot to camp that night, in a hollow protected from wind. After dinner, sitting by the fire, Rowan said, "Tell me about before Calhoun's." Eleanor poked at the fire with a stick. "Not much to tell. My mother died when I was young. My father worked various jobs, never kept any of them long. Drank more than he worked. When he died, I found out he owed money all over, Calhoun's being the biggest debt. I didn't have anything to pay with except labor." "No other family?" "No one who'd claim me. I was too big, too plain, too much trouble." She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. Just fact. "What about you? You said your father was a trapper." "Was. He died when I was 15, fell through ice." Rowan stared into the flames. "My mother went back to her people after that. Crow tribe, north of here. She tried to get me to come with her, but I wanted to stay in the mountains. Been here ever since." "You ever visit her?" "First few years, yeah, then less often. She died about 10 years back." He was quiet for a moment. "She would have liked you, would have approved of someone who doesn't quit." Eleanor felt that warmth in her chest again. "What was her name?" "Sarah Lightfoot, before she married my father." He smiled slightly. "She was tough. Had to be, married to a white trapper. Neither side fully accepted them. She didn't care, said people's opinions were just noise. Smart woman." "Very." Rowan added wood to the fire. "She's the one who taught me most of what I know. My father taught me to trap and shoot, but she taught me to survive, to read the land, to respect it. The clothes you gave me were hers, yes. She was tall, strong, built more like you than most women. I kept them after she died, not sure why. Glad I did now." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire. Above, stars blazed in the clear sky, more than Eleanor had ever seen. Out here, away from any settlement, the darkness was absolute, which made the stars even brighter. "You ever lonely out here?" Eleanor asked. "All those years alone?" "Sometimes. But I was lonelier around people. At least out here, the solitude was honest." He glanced at her. "It's better now. Having someone who pulls their weight, who understands the work. Is that all? Just someone to share the work?" Rowan was quiet for a long moment. "No," he finally said. "It's more than that. But I don't have words for what it is yet." Eleanor understood. She didn't have words for it either. This thing growing between them. Partnership, yes. Respect, definitely. But also something warmer, more personal. Not love. Not yet. But maybe the foundation love could build on. They returned to the cabin 2 days later to find fresh tracks around the perimeter. Not human, wolf, a single animal from the look of it. "Male," Rowan said, studying the prints. "Big one. Probably scouting for a new territory." "Is that bad?" "Could be. Lone males are unpredictable. They'll take risks a pack won't." He followed the tracks to where they circled the smokehouse. "He's interested in our food stores. We'll need to watch for him." That night, the wolf announced its presence with howling. Close, too close. Rowan grabbed the rifle. "Stay inside. I'm coming with you." "Eleanor? We're partners, remember? You said so yourself. Partners don't let each other face danger alone." Rowan looked like he wanted to argue. Then he nodded and grabbed the second rifle, the older one he'd been teaching Eleanor with. "Stay close. Don't shoot unless I say." They went out together into the darkness. The howling had stopped, but Rowan moved toward the smokehouse with purpose. His torch cast jumping shadows across the snow. The wolf was there. Massive, gray, with eyes that reflected the torchlight in an eerie glow. It had been testing the smokehouse door, looking for weakness. When it saw them, it didn't run. Just stood there, evaluating, deciding if they were threat or opportunity. Rowan raised his rifle. "Get!" The wolf didn't move. "I said get!" Rowan fired into the air. That got a reaction. The wolf flinched, but instead of running, it snarled. Lips pulled back from teeth that looked capable of tearing through bone. Eleanor raised her own rifle, heart pounding. The wolf's attention shifted to her. She could feel it measuring her, the same way Carter had, looking for weakness. She didn't give it any, kept the rifle steady, her stance firm. The standoff lasted maybe 10 seconds, felt like an hour. Then the wolf turned and loped away, disappearing into the trees with shocking speed. "It'll be back," Rowan said. They always come back once they've marked a food source. He was right. The wolf returned the next night and the night after. Each time they drove it off with gunfire and torches. But it was getting bolder, coming closer, testing harder. On the fourth night, it brought friends. 3 wolves this time. Moving in coordination, one distracting while another tested the smokehouse from a different angle. Smart, Rowan muttered. Too smart. They drove the pack off, but it took more ammunition, more effort. And Eleanor could see the calculation in Rowan's expression. They couldn't keep this up indefinitely. Eventually, they'd run out of bullets, or the wolves would succeed. We need to kill the leader, Eleanor said. The big male. He's the one who brought the others. Rowan looked at her. That means tracking him. In the dark. On his territory. Do we have a choice? No, but it's dangerous. If we corner him, he'll fight, and wolves fight to kill. Eleanor checked her rifle. Then we better not miss. They set out an hour before dawn, when the wolves were most active. Rowan led, following tracks by torchlight. Eleanor stayed close, rifle ready, every sense heightened. The tracks led into a ravine, steep sides, narrow bottom, perfect ambush territory. Rowan paused at the entrance. Could be a trap. They're smart enough to use terrain. We go anyway? We go anyway. They descended carefully. The ravine walls rose on either side, blocking moonlight. Shadows were absolute. The attack came from above. The big male dropped from a ledge, going straight for Rowan. He twisted aside, the wolf's jaws missing his throat by inches. Eleanor swung her rifle around, trying to find a shot that wouldn't hit Rowan. The wolf and Rowan went down in a tangle of fur and limbs. Rowan's rifle clattered away. He had his knife out, trying to keep those massive jaws away from his face. Eleanor fired. The shot went high, but it made the wolf flinch. That gave Rowan the opening he needed. His knife found the wolf's ribs, driving deep. The animal yelped, pulling back. Blood darkened its gray fur. Eleanor fired again. This time she didn't miss. The wolf collapsed, twitched once, and went still. Rowan lay in the snow, breathing hard. Blood streaked his face. His or the wolf's, Eleanor couldn't tell in the torchlight. You hit? She asked, kneeling beside him. Don't think so. You? No. They stayed there for a moment, catching their breath. Then Rowan started laughing, rough, half hysterical. What's funny? You, me, fighting a wolf in a ravine at dawn. He sat up, wincing. This is insane. Our life is completely insane. Eleanor found herself laughing too, because he was right. This was madness. And somehow, it was also exactly where she wanted to be. They hauled the wolf's body back to the cabin as the sun rose. It would make good pelts, and the meat was edible if you prepared it right. Nothing wasted. The other wolves didn't return. Without their leader, the pack moved on to easier territory. That evening, washing blood from her hands, Eleanor caught sight of herself in the small mirror Rowan kept by the basin. She barely recognized the woman staring back. This woman had muscle in her arms, scars on her hands, a hardness in her eyes that came from facing down predators and not flinching. This woman had killed to protect what was hers. You look different, Rowan said from behind her. I am different. Better? Eleanor thought about the woman she'd been at Calhoun's, invisible, beaten down, worth nothing to anyone, including herself. Yes, she said. Better. Rowan came to stand beside her. In the mirror, they looked like they belonged together. 2 people shaped by the same hard land into something stronger than either had been alone. When spring comes, he said quietly, and we see that preacher, I'm not just marrying you because it's practical. No, I'm marrying you because I want to. His reflection met hers in the glass. Because you're the first person I've met in 20 years who can stand beside me as an equal, who doesn't need me to be less than I am, and doesn't pretend to be more than they are. Eleanor turned to face him. That's a strange kind of proposal. It's an honest one. Honest is good. She held his gaze. Yes, I'll marry you, for real this time, not just out of desperation. Rowan smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. Then he did something he'd never done before. He pulled her into a hug. Eleanor stiffened, startled. Then she relaxed into it. His arms were solid around her, warm despite the cold cabin. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. This was partnership. This was trust. This was choosing someone and being chosen in return. When they pulled apart, something had shifted again. The distance that had existed between them, necessary at first, when everything was new and uncertain, had closed. "There's still the whole winter to get through," Rowan said. "Still hard months ahead." "I know. And being married won't make any of it easier." "I know that too." "Good." He touched her face, calloused fingers gentle. "Because I need you to understand what you're signing up for. This life, this land, it's brutal. It breaks most people. And I can't promise it won't break you eventually. But you think I'll make it?" "I think you've already made it further than anyone had a right to expect, including me." His hand dropped. "Spring's coming. We'll get married, and then we'll build something worth keeping." Eleanor nodded, because that's what they'd been doing all along, really. Building something, not just a homestead or a partnership, but a life. One hard choice at a time, one survived challenge after another. The invisible woman from Calhoun's trading post was gone. In her place stood someone who could track wolves, split wood, defend her home. Someone who'd chosen strength over safety and found she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. Outside, snow began falling again, soft this time, gentle, like the mountain was acknowledging that the worst had passed. Winter would end, spring would come, and Eleanor would be here to see it, not as a survivor clinging desperately to life, but as someone who'd earned her place in this hard, beautiful, unforgiving land. Someone who belonged. Spring arrived like a whisper, so gradual Eleanor almost missed it. One morning she woke to the sound of dripping water instead of howling wind, ice melting off the cabin roof, trickling into the snow below. "Thaw's starting," Rowan said at breakfast. He looked different somehow, lighter, maybe. Like winter had been a weight he was finally setting down. "Another week or two, the trails will be passable. We can make the trip to Joseph's camp." Eleanor's stomach fluttered. The wedding. She'd almost forgotten in the daily grind of survival. Is the preacher reliable? What if he doesn't show? He'll show. Brother Marcus has been making this circuit for 15 years, never missed a spring yet. Rowan poured coffee into her cup. Joseph will have word if there's been a change, but there won't be. The days that followed were strange. Winter's grip loosened slowly, revealing a world Eleanor had never seen. Green things pushed through melting snow. Birds returned, filling the silence with sound. The creek swelled with runoff, its frozen surface cracking and breaking apart. And Eleanor found herself nervous in a way she hadn't been since that first night leaving Calhoun's. She was getting married. Actually, married. Not the desperate arrangement she'd agreed to in January, but a real commitment. A choice made with clear eyes and full understanding of what it meant. "You're quiet," Rowan observed one evening. They were working together to repair winter damage to the smokehouse, replacing boards that had cracked in the cold. "Just thinking." "About?" Eleanor drove a nail with more force than necessary. "About whether I know what I'm doing, whether this is—" She stopped, searching for words. "I've never been married before. Never even thought I would be. And now I'm marrying someone I've known for 4 months. Having second thoughts? No. Maybe. I don't know." The nail bent under her next swing. She cursed and pried it out. "Are you?" Rowan set down his hammer. "I'm 42 years old, Eleanor. I've had 20 years to think about what I want. I want a partner. Someone strong enough to build a life with, honest enough to tell me when I'm wrong, and stubborn enough to not give up when things get hard. You're all of those things." "That's very practical." "You want pretty words instead?" "No." Eleanor started on a new nail, this one going in straight. "Pretty words would make me suspicious. I want to make sure we both know what this is." "What do you think it is?" She considered while working. The rhythm of hammer on nail helped her think. "A partnership, built on respect and shared work, with the potential to become something more, if we're lucky." "That's what I think too." Rowan went back to his own repairs. "And Eleanor, we're already becoming something more. You know that, right?" She did know. Had felt it growing in small moments, the way he asked her opinion now instead of just telling her what to do. The way she'd stopped thinking of the cabin as his space and started mentally dividing it into theirs. The way they'd developed routines together, moving around each other with the unconscious coordination of people who belonged in the same space. Yeah, she said quietly. I know. 2 weeks later, they set out for Joseph's camp. The journey that had taken days in deep winter now took only one, following trails revealed by melting snow. Eleanor rode behind Rowan on the bay gelding, but this time she wasn't clinging on terrified. She'd learned to move with the horse, to read its rhythm. Joseph's camp was bigger than Eleanor expected. Not just his small shelter, but several structures scattered through a clearing. Smoke rose from multiple fires, voices carried on the spring air. Looks like the preacher's already here, Rowan said, nodding toward a sturdy canvas tent near the center. And half the territory from the sound of it. They dismounted at the edge of camp. Joseph appeared almost immediately, grin splitting his weathered face. Rowan! Eleanor! I was starting to think you wouldn't make it. He pulled Rowan into a rough hug, then surprised Eleanor by doing the same to her. You survived him. That's an accomplishment. She did more than survive, Rowan said. She killed the wolf that was hitting our stores. Shot it clean. Joseph's eyebrows rose. Did she now? Eleanor, you're just full of surprises. He gestured toward the camp. Come on, Brother Marcus arrived 2 days ago. Been performing marriages left and right. Yours will make the 5th. They followed Joseph into camp. Eleanor counted maybe 15 people scattered around various fires, trappers mostly, but also a few women who looked as weathered and capable as their men. They all looked up as Rowan and Eleanor passed, curiosity playing on their faces. That's Hale's woman, someone whispered, not quietly enough. Heard she stood down Carter single-handed. That true, Rowan? She really face him alone? Rowan's expression went cold. She did. And Carter's gone south. Won't be coming back. The whispers intensified, but Eleanor caught admiration mixed with the curiosity now. She kept her head up, meeting eyes that met hers. These people understood the mountains. They'd respect strength more than beauty or social grace. Brother Marcus turned out to be a thin man in his 60s, with kind eyes and hands gnarled by arthritis. He looked up from the Bible he'd been reading as they approached. Rowan Hale. Joseph said you'd be coming. His gaze shifted to Eleanor, assessing but not unkind. And this must be Eleanor. Yes, sir. No need for sir. Marcus is fine. He closed the Bible carefully. Joseph tells me you've had quite the winter. It was hard, Eleanor admitted. But I'm still here. So I see. And you want to marry this man? I do. Marcus looked at Rowan. And you're certain about this? Marriage is a serious commitment, especially out here where there's no easy way to undo it. I'm certain, Rowan said. Have been since January. Just took us a while to get here. Well then. Marcus stood, joints creaking. We can do the ceremony tomorrow morning if that suits you. Give you tonight to think it over one final time. Make sure this is what you both want. That night, the camp held something close to a celebration. Not for any particular wedding, just the general relief of winter's end and the gathering of people who rarely saw each other. Someone produced a fiddle. Someone else had whiskey. A communal meal appeared, everyone contributing what they could. Eleanor found herself sitting with the other women, nursing a cup of weak coffee and listening to their talk. They discussed practical things, which areas had good game, where supplies could be traded, whose roof needed fixing. But they also laughed, told stories, complained about their men with affectionate exasperation. So you really came up here knowing nothing? Asked a woman named Sarah, who trapped with her husband in the eastern ranges. Never been in the wilderness before? Never, Eleanor confirmed. I worked in a kitchen at a trading post. That was my entire life. And Rowan just threw you into everything? Pretty much. Sarah shook her head, something like respect in her expression. Most women would have died, or run. You're tougher than you look. I had good reason not to run. What reason? Eleanor thought about Calhoun's kitchen, the corner, the endless mockery, the crushing weight of being nothing to anyone. Going back would have been worse than anything the mountain could do to me. The women exchanged glances. They understood. Most of them had similar stories, lives they'd left behind for the brutal honesty of the wilderness. Out here, your worth wasn't determined by appearance or social standing, just by whether you could pull your weight and not quit when things got hard. Well, said an older woman named Ruth, welcome to the sisterhood of crazy women who chose mountains over civilization. We're a small group, but we're persistent. They drank to that, and Eleanor felt something she'd never experienced at Calhoun's. Belonging. These women saw her as one of them, not as someone to mock or pity, just another person who'd made hard choices and lived with them. Later, Eleanor found Rowan at the edge of camp, talking quietly with Joseph. They looked up as she approached. "Everything all right?" Rowan asked. "Fine. Just wanted to make sure you hadn't changed your mind," Joseph laughed. "She's checking on you now. I like her more every time I see her." "I haven't changed my mind," Rowan said. "Have you?" "No." Eleanor sat beside him on the log he'd claimed. "But I wanted to tell you something before tomorrow, in case I don't get another chance." "Sounds serious." "It is." She took a breath. "When you chose me at Calhoun's, I thought you were insane, some wild mountain man who didn't know any better. I figured I'd come up here, realize it was impossible, and you'd have to take me back. What changed? You never treated me like I was doing you a favor by staying, never acted like I should be grateful you'd chosen me. You just expected me to be capable, and somehow that made me actually become capable." She met his eyes. "I'm not the same person who left that trading post, and I like who I'm becoming. That's because of you." Rowan was quiet for a moment, then, "You give me too much credit. All I did was not lie to you about what this life required. You did the rest yourself. Still, I wanted you to know. Before we make it official." He reached over and took her hand, rough palm against rough palm, both of them scarred and calloused from the same work. "I'm glad you came with me that night. Even when I wasn't sure you'd make it, I was glad." Joseph stood up, stretching. "All right, I'm giving you some privacy before this gets too sentimental for my taste. Eleanor, there's a tent set up for you near the women. Rowan, you're with the men. Tradition says you sleep apart the night before." They both rolled their eyes at that, but they followed the custom. Eleanor spent the night in a tent with Sarah and Ruth, listening to their advice about married life in the mountains. Some of it was practical, how to handle disagreements when you couldn't just leave and cool off. Some was more personal, how to balance independence with partnership. "The key," Ruth said, "is remembering you're choosing to be together every day you choose. The minute it stops being a choice and starts being an obligation, that's when you're in trouble." Eleanor thought about that as she lay on her borrowed bedroll. Every day you choose. She liked that. It made marriage feel less like a trap and more like an ongoing decision, one she could make with clear eyes. The ceremony itself was simple. Brother Marcus gathered everyone in camp at sunrise, the light just touching the treetops. Eleanor wore the cleanest clothes she had, her mother-in-law's wool dress, mended and altered to fit better. Rowan wore his usual buckskin and furs, but he'd tied his hair back and scrubbed his face clean. They stood facing each other while Marcus spoke about commitment and partnership, about the challenges of building a life in harsh country. His words were practical rather than flowery, which Eleanor appreciated. He didn't promise them happiness or ease, just the opportunity to face difficulties together instead of alone. "Do you, Rowan Hale, take this woman as your wife? To stand beside her through whatever comes, to respect her strength and support her when she needs it, to build a life with her based on honesty and shared purpose?" "I do." "And do you, Eleanor Voss, take this man as your husband? To stand beside him through whatever comes, to respect his experience while speaking your own truth, to build a life with him based on honesty and shared purpose?" Eleanor looked at Rowan, this hard, quiet man who'd seen something in her that no one else had, who'd given her the choice to become someone stronger than she'd ever imagined. "I do." "Then by the authority I hold, I pronounce you married. You may, well, I suppose you may kiss, though I know that's not really how things are done out here." But Rowan leaned in and kissed Eleanor anyway. Brief, almost awkward, but genuine. The small crowd cheered, and Joseph produced more whiskey for toasting. They spent the rest of the day at camp, accepting congratulations and well wishes. People gave them small gifts, a hunting knife from Joseph, a packet of seeds from Ruth, ammunition from another trapper who'd heard about Eleanor's shooting. "You're one of us now," Sarah said, hugging Eleanor goodbye. "Officially part of the mountain community. That means if you ever need help, you send word. We take care of our own." They rode back to the cabin as the sun set, Eleanor's arms around Rowan's waist. Married. She was married. The word felt strange in her mind, but not wrong, just new. "Different than you expected?" Rowan asked as they rode. "I didn't really have expectations. What about you?" "About the same," Simple, honest, witnessed by people who understand what we're committing to. He was quiet for a moment. My mother would have liked it. Would she have liked me? She'd have loved that you shot a wolf and didn't run from Carter. Those are the things she valued. He squeezed Eleanor's hand where it rested against his stomach. She'd have been proud to call you daughter. They reached the cabin as full dark settled. Rowan helped Eleanor down from the horse, but instead of going inside immediately, they both stood looking at the small structure that was their home. We should build another room, Eleanor said. The loft's too small for two people long term. And if we're really doing this, building a life here, we'll need more space eventually. Eventually meaning? Meaning, I don't know yet, but we should plan for possibilities. She looked at him. Is that okay? Planning ahead like that? More than okay. I like that you're thinking long term. Rowan unlocked the cabin door. We'll start planning the addition once spring work settles down. Need to get the garden planted first, repair winter damage, get the meat stores built back up. Inside, the cabin felt different somehow. Still the same rough space it had always been, but Eleanor saw it with new eyes. Their space. Their home. A foundation to build on. That night, for the first time, Eleanor didn't climb to the loft alone. She and Rowan shared the bed in the small sleeping space, awkward at first with the newness of it, but gradually relaxing into each other's presence. This is strange, Eleanor whispered in the darkness. What is? Being married, being this. She gestured vaguely, knowing he couldn't see but would understand. I keep waiting to feel different, like marriage would change something fundamental. Does it feel different? Not really, just like us, but official. Rowan's laugh rumbled through his chest. That's probably how it should be. We've already been living as partners. The ceremony just made it legal. Do you think... Eleanor stopped, unsure how to phrase the question. Think what? Do you think we'll ever have what other married people have? The romantic part, I mean. Not just partnership and respect, but more. Rowan was quiet for so long Eleanor thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, I think we already have more than most married people. We chose each other knowing exactly what we were getting. No illusions, no lies. That's worth more than romance built on pretty words and false promises. But that's not a no. No. It's not a no. His arm tightened around her waist. I care about you, Eleanor. More than I expected to when I brought you here. I don't know if that's love or if it will become love, but it's real and it matters. Eleanor settled against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. That's enough. For now, that's enough. Spring unfolded around them over the following weeks. Eleanor planted the garden under Rowan's instruction, learning which vegetables would survive the short growing season. They worked together to expand the smokehouse, add a small hen house for chickens Joseph promised to bring on his next visit, and start planning the cabin addition. And slowly, carefully, they learned to be married. It wasn't always smooth. They argued about how to organize the storage, about whether to trade furs now or wait for better prices, about a dozen small things that came up when two people built a life together. But they learned to argue productively, stating positions, listening, compromising. Neither tried to win. They tried to find solutions. One morning, about a month after the wedding, Eleanor woke to find Rowan already up, standing at the window with an odd expression on his face. What's wrong? She asked, alarmed. Nothing's wrong. Come look. Eleanor joined him at the window. At first she saw nothing unusual, just the familiar clearing, the forest beyond, morning light touching everything. Then she saw what had caught Rowan's attention, a small figure at the edge of the clearing, a child. Is that... Eleanor blinked, sure she was seeing things. A boy, maybe 8 or 9. Rowan was already pulling on his boots. Stay here, I'll find out what's going on. But Eleanor followed him outside anyway. As they approached, the child looked up, and Eleanor's heart clenched. The boy was filthy, bruised, and so thin his bones showed through ragged clothes. His eyes were hollow with exhaustion, and something worse. Fear. Hey, Rowan said gently, stopping several feet away. What's your name? The boy didn't answer, just stared at them like he expected violence. It's okay. We're not going to hurt you. Rowan crouched down, making himself less threatening. Are you lost? Finally, the boy spoke. His voice was barely a whisper. They're gone. Everyone's gone. Who's gone? Eleanor asked, moving closer slowly. My family, the others. The fever came and his voice broke. I woke up and they were all dead. I didn't know what to do. I just walked. I walked until I couldn't anymore. Eleanor and Rowan exchanged glances. Disease had swept through settlements before. Whole camps could be wiped out in days when fever hit. How long have you been walking? Rowan asked. The boy shook his head. I don't know. Days, weeks maybe. I can't remember. Eleanor made a decision. She walked forward slowly and knelt in front of the boy. What's your name? Thomas. Thomas, my name is Eleanor. This is Rowan. We live here in that cabin, and right now you look like you could use food and rest. Will you come inside? Thomas looked between them, evaluating. Eleanor could see the calculation in his young eyes, the hard-learned wariness of someone who'd seen the worst humanity could offer. You're not going to hurt me? He finally asked. No, Eleanor said firmly. We're going to feed you, let you rest, and figure out what to do next. That's all. I promise. Something in her tone must have convinced him. Thomas nodded shakily and let Eleanor lead him toward the cabin. Inside, Rowan built up the fire while Eleanor heated water for washing. Thomas sat at the table, looking around with wide eyes, like he'd stumbled into a dream and wasn't sure if he'd wake up. When did you last eat? Eleanor asked, setting bread and dried meat in front of him. Thomas grabbed the food with both hands, stuffing it into his mouth so fast he choked. Eleanor poured water and made him drink slowly. Easy. You'll make yourself sick. The food's not going anywhere. It took everything the boy had not to wolf down every scrap. Eleanor kept giving him small portions, letting his stomach adjust. While he ate, she and Rowan talked quietly by the fire. We can't keep him, Rowan said, keeping his voice low. We're barely managing ourselves. A child who'll die if we turn him out, Eleanor finished. Look at him, Rowan. He's half-starved. Probably has been walking for days with no destination. Where exactly would we send him? There are settlements, places with families who could what? Take in an orphan when they have their own mouths to feed? You know how that goes. He'll end up like I did, working off debt, treated like property. Eleanor's voice hardened. I won't do that to him. Rowan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Eleanor, this isn't practical. We don't know how to raise a child, don't have resources for it. This isn't what you signed up for, I know. Eleanor looked at him steadily. But he's here, and he needs help, and we're the only ones around to give it. So the question is whether we're the kind of people who turn away a child in need, or whether we're the kind who find a way to make it work. Rowan stared at her for a long moment. Then he sighed. You're not going to let this go. No, I'm not. Even if it makes everything harder? Everything's already hard. This is just different hard. Eleanor glanced at Thomas, who'd finished eating and was now slumped in the chair, eyes drooping. Besides, you said you wanted to build something, a life, a homestead, something lasting. A family is part of that, isn't it? I was thinking we'd start a family the traditional way, eventually. So we're starting in a different order. That seems fitting for us. Despite everything, Rowan laughed. Nothing about our life together has been traditional. Why start now? He looked at Thomas, his expression softening slightly. All right, we'll keep him, at least through summer, see how it works. But he pulls his weight. Old enough to work means old enough to contribute. Agreed. As soon as he's well enough. They set Thomas up in the loft. Eleanor and Rowan would share the main room for now, plan the addition faster than originally intended. The boy was asleep almost before his head hit the pillow, his small body finally safe enough to stop fighting. That night, lying beside Rowan in their makeshift bed near the fire, Eleanor whispered, Thank you. For what? For agreeing, for being willing to try. You didn't give me much choice, Rowan said, but there was no heat in it. Besides, you were right. We couldn't turn him away, not and still call ourselves decent people. Do you think we can do this? Raise him? I think we'll figure it out, same way we've figured out everything else. He pulled her closer. Though I'll warn you now, I have no idea how to be a father. Never thought I'd need to learn. I have no idea how to be a mother either. We'll learn together. And they did learn, though it wasn't easy. Thomas was damaged in ways that went beyond physical hunger. He flinched at loud noises, hoarded food in his pockets until Eleanor convinced him there would always be more, woke screaming from nightmares about the dead family he'd left behind. But slowly, carefully, he began to heal, began to trust, began to act like a child instead of a small, traumatized survivor. Eleanor taught him to help in the garden, to gather kindling, to perform small tasks that built his confidence. Rowan taught him to fish, to track animals, to navigate by the sun and stars. He's good at this, Rowan observed one evening, watching Thomas successfully build a fire on his third try. Quick learner, doesn't quit even when it's hard. Sounds like someone else I know, Eleanor said. By midsummer, Thomas had filled out, his hollow cheeks becoming round again. He laughed sometimes, hesitant at first, then more freely. Started calling them Eleanor and Rowan, then one day accidentally called Eleanor Ma and turned bright red. It's okay, Eleanor said gently. You can call me that if you want. Really? Really? If you're comfortable with it. Thomas thought about it. What about him? Can I call him Pa? You'd have to ask him yourself. Thomas found Rowan working on the cabin addition and stood there nervous until Rowan looked up. Something wrong? Can I call you Pa? Eleanor said I could call her Ma if I wanted, but I should ask you myself before. Rowan's expression went soft in a way Eleanor had rarely seen. Yeah, you can call me Pa, if that's what you want. It is. Thomas grinned, suddenly looking his age for the first time since he'd arrived. Can I help with the building? You can hand me boards. Come on. Eleanor watched them work together, her heart full in a way she'd never experienced. This wasn't the life she'd planned. Wasn't anything she could have imagined sitting in that corner at Calhoun's. It was better. That night, with Thomas asleep in the loft and the addition halfway complete, Eleanor and Rowan sat outside watching stars appear in the deepening sky. We're doing it, Eleanor said. Actually building something lasting. We are. Rowan took her hand, though it's not what I expected when I rode into Calhoun's last winter. Better or worse? Better. Definitely better. He squeezed her hand. You've made me better, Eleanor. Softer in some ways, which I didn't think was possible. You've made me stronger. Made me believe I could be more than what people said I was. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other against all odds, and built something real from nothing but determination and honest work. Inside, Thomas stirred in his sleep, but didn't wake. Safe. Loved. Home. And Eleanor, who'd spent years invisible and worthless, finally understood what it meant to matter. Not because of how she looked or what others thought of her, but because she'd chosen to be strong, to stand her ground, to build instead of break. She was a wife, a mother, a partner, a survivor. She was everything she'd never thought she could be. And the mountains, harsh and beautiful and unforgiving, had made her that way. Summer faded into autumn with the kind of speed that made Eleanor nervous. She'd survived one winter now, knew what was coming, but this year felt different, heavier somehow. She realized why one morning in late September, doubled over behind the cabin, retching into the bushes. Rowan found her there, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. His expression went from concern to understanding in about 2 seconds. How long? He asked. I don't know. Month, maybe? I thought it was just bad meat at first, but she gestured helplessly at her stomach. It keeps happening, every morning. Rowan crouched beside her, a complicated mix of emotions crossing his face. Are you sure? Pretty sure. My mother had morning sickness with every pregnancy. She described it exactly like this. Eleanor sat back on her heels. I wasn't planning on this. Not yet. We just got Thomas settled, and, hey, Rowan took her shoulders, making her look at him. We'll handle it, same as everything else. A baby isn't the same as learning to chop wood. No, it's harder. But we're not the same people we were last winter either. We're stronger now. He helped her stand. How do you feel about it? Really? Eleanor thought about that while they walked back to the cabin. Scared, obviously. Worried about a dozen practical concerns. How would she work while pregnant? Where would the baby sleep? Could they handle another mouth to feed? But underneath all that was something else. Something that felt almost like hope. I'm terrified, she admitted. But also, I don't know, maybe ready? As ready as anyone can be for something like this. That's how I feel too. Rowan steadied her as she climbed the cabin steps. Should we tell Thomas? Not yet. Let's wait until I'm further along. Make sure everything's... She stopped, not wanting to voice the fear. Women died in childbirth. Babies didn't always survive. Counting on the future felt dangerous, but Rowan understood. We'll tell him when it's time. They kept the secret for another month while Eleanor's body changed in ways she couldn't hide forever. Her clothes grew tight. Her energy flagged. The morning sickness gave way to a different kind of exhaustion that made simple tasks feel monumental. Thomas noticed something was wrong even before they told him. He started doing extra chores without being asked, picking up slack Eleanor didn't realize she was leaving. "Ma's tired a lot," he said to Rowan one evening while they were working on the new edition. "Is she sick?" "Not sick, just..." Rowan set down his hammer. "She's going to have a baby. You're going to have a brother or sister come spring." Thomas's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? That's..." The boy's face split into a grin. "That's good, right? I mean, you're happy about it?" "We are. Nervous, but happy." Rowan studied him. "How do you feel about it?" Thomas thought for a long moment. "I had a little sister. Before the fever. She was only 3. I used to help Ma take care of her." His expression went distant. "I miss her. Miss all of them." Rowan pulled the boy into a rough hug, still awkward at physical affection, but getting better. "I know you do. And they'll always be your family. But so are we now. This baby won't replace your sister, just give you someone new to look after. I'd like that." Thomas's voice was muffled against Rowan's shoulder. "Having someone to look after again." When Eleanor found out about the conversation later, she had to sit down and cry. Hormones, probably, but also the overwhelming rightness of it. This strange family they'd built from broken pieces and desperate choices. It was real. It mattered. Winter came early that year. By October, snow was already falling, and Eleanor's pregnancy became impossible to hide. Her belly swelled despite the hard work and sparse diet. The baby made itself known with kicks that took her breath away. "Strong one," Ruth observed during a visit. The older woman had trekked over from her territory specifically to check on Eleanor. "Feels like you've got a fighter in there." "Takes after its mother," Rowan said from across the cabin. Ruth laughed. "That's the truth. Eleanor, you feeling all right otherwise? Any bleeding, pain, swelling that won't go down?" "No, just tired and hungry all the time, which is inconvenient when food has to last the winter." "We'll manage," Rowan said. "Hunting's been good, and Joseph brought extra supplies when he heard." Word had spread through the mountain community about Eleanor's pregnancy. People Eleanor barely knew had shown up with gifts, dried berries from Sarah, smoked fish from another family, baby clothes carefully preserved from someone's own children. The generosity had shocked her. "We take care of our own," Ruth had explained. "You're one of us now. That means when you need help, you get it." As winter deepened, the cabin addition became crucial. They'd finished it just before the heavy snows, creating a second room with a proper bed and space for the baby's cradle. Thomas had moved his bedroll to the loft permanently, declaring himself the big brother who didn't need coddling. The isolation that Eleanor had feared became a kind of protection. No one expected her to do anything but survive and grow the baby. Rowan took over the heaviest work without comment. Thomas helped where he could, learning to cook and clean alongside the outdoor tasks. "You're doing good," Eleanor told him one evening, watching him stir the stew without being asked. "Better than good. You're becoming a fine young man." Thomas ducked his head, embarrassed but pleased. "Just doing what needs doing. That's what you taught me." By January, Eleanor was huge and miserable. Her back ached constantly. Her feet swelled until she could barely fit them in boots. Sleep came in brief, uncomfortable stretches. "I can't do this for 3 more months," she told Rowan one particularly bad night. "You can. You will." He rubbed her back with patient hands. "Same as you've done everything else, one day at a time. What if something goes wrong? What if the baby, or I..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Then we handle it. But you're strong, Eleanor. Strongest person I know. You're going to get through this." She wanted to believe him. Most days she did. But fear lived in her chest now, constant companion through the dark winter months. Fear of dying. Fear of the baby dying. Fear of leaving Thomas and Rowan alone. February brought the worst storm Eleanor had ever seen. Wind howled for 3 days straight, snow piling so high they had to dig their way out every morning just to reach the smokehouse. The cabin groaned under the assault, and Eleanor lay in bed feeling the baby kick and wondering if they'd all be buried alive. On the third night, something changed. A pain low in her back that didn't feel like the usual ache. Eleanor sat up, hand on her belly, trying to identify what was different. "Eleanor?" Rowan was beside her instantly. "What's wrong?" Maybe nothing. Just a pain. Different than usual." "Different how?" Before she could answer, another pain hit, sharper this time. Eleanor gasped. Rowan's face went pale in the firelight. "Is it the baby?" "I think—" Another pain, stronger. "It's too early. It's not supposed to be yet. February is too early." But the baby didn't care about timing. Over the next hour, the pains came faster, harder. Eleanor tried to stay calm, tried to remember everything Ruth had told her about childbirth, but fear overwhelmed everything else. "I need Ruth," she gasped between contractions, "or someone who knows what they're doing. I can't." "The storm," Rowan said, and Eleanor heard the helplessness in his voice. "No one can travel in this. We're on our own." Thomas appeared at the bedroom door, eyes wide. "What's happening?" "The baby's coming." Rowan's voice steadied, taking charge because someone had to. "Thomas, I need you to keep the fire going. Hot water, as much as we can get. Clean cloths. Tear up that old shirt if you have to. Can you do that?" "Yes, Pa." Thomas ran to follow orders, grateful for something to do. Rowan turned back to Eleanor. "I've birthed foals, calves, even helped with a difficult lamb once. I know the basics. We can do this." "This isn't a calf," Eleanor said through gritted teeth. "I know, but the principle's the same. Your body knows what to do. We just have to help it along." The hours that followed blurred into an endless cycle of pain and effort. Eleanor had thought she knew what hard work felt like, chopping wood, hauling water, surviving the mountain. But this was different. This was her body tearing itself apart to bring new life into the world. And there was no way to stop it, no way to rest. Just endure. Rowan stayed with her through all of it, talking her through contractions, wiping sweat from her face, holding her hand when the pain got so bad she couldn't think. Thomas kept the fire roaring and the water hot, occasionally peeking in with worried eyes before Rowan sent him back out. "I can't do this," Eleanor sobbed at one point. "It's too much. I can't." "Yes, you can. You've already come so far." Rowan's face was close to hers, his gray eyes intense. "You killed a wolf, Eleanor. You faced down Carter. You survived a winter that breaks grown men. You can do this too. What if the baby doesn't? Then we'll grieve. But don't borrow that pain yet. Right now you fight. You hear me? You fight." So Eleanor fought. When her body screamed for her to give up, she pushed harder. When exhaustion threatened to drown her, she found reserves she didn't know existed. When fear tried to paralyze her, she remembered who she'd become in these mountains, someone who didn't quit. Dawn was breaking when the baby finally came. One last impossible push, and then a cry. Thin, reedy, but unmistakably alive. "It's a girl," Rowan said, his voice breaking. "Eleanor, we have a daughter." He placed the tiny, squalling thing on Eleanor's chest. She was so small, impossibly small, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that seemed way too powerful for her size. "She's early," Eleanor managed, exhausted beyond measure. Will she be okay?" Rowan was checking the baby with hands that shook slightly. "She's breathing on her own, good color, strong heartbeat. She's small, but—" He looked up, and Eleanor saw tears in his eyes for the first time ever. "She's a fighter, like her mother." Thomas peeked around the doorway. "Can I see?" "Come here," Eleanor said. "Come meet your sister." The boy approached slowly, eyes wide with wonder. "She's so tiny." "You were that tiny once," Rowan said. "Hard to believe, but it's true. What are we going to name her?" Thomas reached out tentatively, and the baby gripped his finger with surprising strength. Eleanor looked at Rowan. They hadn't discussed names, hadn't wanted to jinx anything by planning too far ahead. "Sarah," Rowan said quietly. After my mother, if that's all right with you. Sarah. Eleanor tested the name, looking at the tiny face already losing its newborn scrunch. Sarah Hale. It fits. The baby, Sarah, decided at that moment to open her eyes. They were pale gray, like her father's, like she was already assessing this strange new world and finding it wanting. She looks annoyed, Thomas observed. She just got evicted from the only home she knew, Eleanor said. I'd be annoyed too. Despite her exhaustion, despite the fear that still lingered, Eleanor felt laughter bubble up. They'd done it. Against odds that seemed impossible, they'd brought a new life into this harsh world. The days that followed were the hardest of Eleanor's life. Sarah was small and needed to eat constantly. Eleanor's body felt like it had been run over by a wagon, and the work of the homestead didn't stop just because there was a new baby. But they managed. Rowan took over even more tasks, running himself ragged. Thomas helped with the baby, learning to change cloths and rock her when she cried. Even Joseph appeared through the melting snow with supplies and advice from Ruth. She's thriving, Joseph announced after examining Sarah at 2 weeks old. Small still, but growing. You did good, Eleanor. Both of you. We just didn't die, Eleanor said from the bed where she was still recovering. That's doing good in these mountains. Don't undersell it. Joseph handed Sarah back to her. Ruth says to tell you she'll visit when the trail's clear. Bring more supplies and check you both properly. As winter finally released its grip and spring appeared again, the cabin settled into new rhythms. Sarah grew stronger, filling out and developing the healthy roundness of a well-fed baby. Her cries, which had been thin and weak at first, became impressively loud. She's definitely yours, Rowan told Eleanor one night when Sarah's screaming had woken them for the third time. Got your stubbornness. And your lungs, Eleanor shot back, stumbling to feed the baby yet again. But even exhausted and touched out, Eleanor felt something she'd never experienced before. Completion. Like all the pieces of her life had finally assembled into something whole. She had a husband who respected her, a son who loved her, a daughter who needed her, a home she'd helped build, a life she'd chosen and fought for. One warm April morning, Eleanor stood outside the cabin watching Thomas teach Sarah to grab at things he held above her. The baby was 3 months old now, chubby and healthy, with her father's eyes and her mother's fierce determination. Rowan came up behind Eleanor, sliding an arm around her waist. What are you thinking about? About how different everything is. A year and a half ago, I was scrubbing pots in a trading post kitchen. Invisible. Worthless. And now, she gestured at the scene in front of them. Now I have this. You always had this in you. You just needed the chance to find it. No. Eleanor turned to face him. I needed you to see it when no one else could. To give me that chance. To believe I was worth the effort. You gave yourself the chance when you got on that horse. All I did was offer. You're the one who said yes. They stood together watching their children. Thomas was 12 now, shooting up tall and lean, learning to trap and hunt. Sarah was grabbing at his nose, giggling when he made funny faces. Do you ever regret it? Eleanor asked. Any of it? Taking a chance on the fat girl from Calhoun's? Rowan pulled her closer. Not even once. Best decision I ever made. You? Eleanor thought about the woman she'd been, broken down by years of mockery and invisible labor, believing she was nothing because that's what everyone told her. Then she thought about the woman she'd become, strong enough to split wood and kill predators, brave enough to defend her home, fierce enough to survive childbirth in a blizzard. I regret wasting 3 years thinking I was worthless, she said, but I don't regret leaving. I don't regret any of this. That evening, after the children were asleep, Eleanor and Rowan sat outside watching stars emerge. It had become their ritual, these quiet moments stolen between the endless demands of mountain life. I've been thinking, Rowan said, about expanding. We've got 2 kids now, likely to have more eventually. We should build a real house, something bigger than the cabin. That's a lot of work. It is, but we've got time. And Thomas is old enough to help properly now. He squeezed her hand. I want to build something that lasts, something our grandchildren might live in someday. Eleanor liked that vision. Not just surviving season to season, but building toward a future, creating something permanent. We'll need more cleared land, better garden space, maybe even livestock beyond chickens. I've been talking to Joseph about getting a milk cow. Says he knows someone who'd trade. Rowan was already planning the way he did. And we should teach Thomas to read and write properly. Sarah too, when she's old enough. Just because we're in the mountains doesn't mean they should grow up ignorant. You want me to teach them? I barely know how to read myself. Then we learn together. Joseph has books. Ruth does too. We borrow them, study them, pass the knowledge on. He looked at her. Our children are going to have choices we didn't. Education gives them that. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. This man who'd lived alone for 20 years, who'd seemed so hard and closed off when she first met him. He was thinking about their grandchildren, about education and futures, and building something that outlasted them both. How did you get so wise? She asked. I'm not wise. I just finally have something worth planning for. Spring turned to summer, and the homestead expanded. With Thomas's help, Rowan started clearing land for the new house. Eleanor planted a bigger garden, Sarah strapped to her back in a carrier Rowan had made. The baby watched everything with those serious gray eyes, like she was memorizing the world. Ruth visited in June, bringing books as promised along with other supplies. She checked Sarah thoroughly and pronounced her thriving. You did well, she told Eleanor. Better than most women would have managed in your circumstances. I had help. Everyone needs help. The smart ones accept it. Ruth settled Sarah on her hip with the ease of long practice. This one's going to be a handful, I can already tell. Takes after her mother, Rowan said, earning a swat from Eleanor. That night, with visitors gone and children sleeping, Eleanor nursed Sarah in the rocking chair Rowan had built. The baby's eyes were already drooping, milk-drunk and content. Eleanor thought about all the women who'd never gotten this chance. The ones who stayed in situations like Calhoun's, ground down by poverty and cruelty until they broke. The ones who didn't have someone see potential where everyone else saw nothing. She thought about the girl she'd been, desperate enough to leave everything behind on the word of a stranger. Brave enough or stupid enough, she still wasn't sure which, maybe both. And she thought about what she'd learned in these mountains. That strength wasn't about being fearless, it was about being terrified and doing the thing anyway. That worth wasn't given by others, it was claimed by your own actions. That family wasn't just blood, it was choosing to stand beside people through everything the world threw at you. Sarah finished nursing and burped impressively. Eleanor laughed, wiping milk from the baby's chin. You're going to be strong, she whispered. Stronger than me because you'll grow up knowing your worth instead of having to fight for it. You'll have a mother who believes in you and a father who will teach you everything he knows. You'll have a brother who already loves you and a home that's solid and real. The baby yawned, unimpressed by the speech. Eleanor carried her to the cradle and tucked her in, watching the tiny chest rise and fall with sleep. Rowan appeared in the doorway. She down? Finally, I swear she fights sleep harder than anything. Definitely yours. He crossed to where Eleanor stood and wrapped his arms around her from behind. What are you thinking about so hard? About how none of this should have worked. A broken-down woman, and a hermit mountain man, and an orphaned boy and a premature baby. On paper, we should have been a disaster. But we're not. No, we're not. Eleanor leaned back against him. We're actually happy. When did that happen? Somewhere between the wolf attack and the wedding, I think. Or maybe before. Maybe the moment you decided to get on that horse. Rowan kissed her temple. Does it matter when? I guess not. They stood together in the darkness, listening to Sarah's soft breathing and the familiar sounds of the mountain at night. Outside, wind moved through pine trees. Somewhere distant, an owl called. The creek ran over rocks with its endless song. This was home. Not just the physical space of cabin and clearing, but the life they'd built here, the family they'd become. Eleanor had spent years invisible, told she was too big, too plain, too worthless to matter. And maybe to the people at Calhoun's, she had been. But those people didn't know what she was capable of, didn't know the strength hidden inside someone everyone had dismissed. Rowan had known, or he'd guessed, or maybe he'd just been desperate enough to take a chance and smart enough to recognize potential when he saw it. Either way, he'd given her the choice, and she'd chosen this life, chosen the hardship and the beauty, the fear and the triumph, the endless work, and the deep satisfaction of building something real. She'd chosen to be more than invisible, more than the fat girl in the corner, more than someone's debtor or servant or joke. She'd chosen to be Eleanor Hale, wife, mother, survivor, partner. A woman who could face down predators and birth babies in blizzards and teach her children that worth came from within, not from what others said about you. The invisible woman was gone, dead and buried under mountain snow. In her place stood someone unbreakable, not because she never felt fear or pain or doubt, but because she'd learned to feel those things and keep going anyway. That was the truth the mountains had taught her. That was the gift Rowan had given her by seeing something everyone else missed. Strength wasn't about being perfect or fearless or always knowing what to do. Strength was about falling down and getting back up, about being terrified and doing the hard thing anyway, about choosing to fight for the life you wanted instead of accepting the one people said you deserved. "I love you," Eleanor said quietly. The words still felt new, strange. They didn't say them often, not because they didn't mean it, but because it felt too big for words sometimes. "I love you too," Rowan said, "though I'm not sure I have words for what that means. It's bigger than just love. Partnership, respect, trust, choosing each other every day. Yeah, all of that." They stayed there until Sarah stirred, making the little noises that meant she'd wake soon and want to eat again. Eleanor sighed and moved toward the cradle, but Rowan stopped her. "I'll get her. You rest." He picked up their daughter with practiced ease now, this hard mountain man who'd learned gentleness because his family needed it from him. Sarah settled against his shoulder, eyes already closing again, just wanting the reassurance of being held. Eleanor watched them in the firelight, her husband and daughter, her son sleeping in the loft above, her home solid around them all. Not perfect, not easy, but real and earned and worth everything it had cost to build it. Tomorrow would bring more work, challenges, difficulties. The mountains never stopped testing you, but Eleanor wasn't afraid of the test anymore. She'd learned to meet it head on, to stand her ground, to fight for what was hers. She climbed into bed and let exhaustion take her, secure in the knowledge that she'd wake tomorrow and do it all again. Because that's what you did when you'd claimed your worth and built a life you believed in. You kept fighting, kept building, kept choosing strength over surrender. And somewhere along the way, the invisible woman had become unstoppable. Not because she'd stopped feeling pain or fear, but because she'd learned those things didn't define her. What defined her was what she did in spite of them. That was the legacy she'd pass to her children. That was the truth she'd learned in these unforgiving mountains. You weren't what other people said about you. You were what you chose to become when no one was watching, when it was just you and the mountain and the choice to quit or keep going. Eleanor had chosen, and she'd never looked back. Outside, snow began falling, early for September, but not unusual at this elevation. The first hints of another winter approaching. Eleanor smiled in her sleep. Let it come. She'd survived worse. They all had. And whatever came next, they'd face it together. As a family, as partners, as people who'd learned that being unbreakable didn't mean never bending. It meant bending and not breaking, falling and getting back up, being afraid and doing it anyway. The invisible woman was gone. In her place stood a force of nature, and the mountains themselves had forged her that way.